Hi everyone, welcome to the El Moria channel. I hope you're all doing well. Today we'll be looking at 2 hours of terrifying Gumball episodes to fall asleep to. But before we begin, I'd just like to kindly ask you all to subscribe. It's completely free and it really helps us improve the videos for this wonderful community we've managed to build. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's begin. First up, we have The Joy from Season 3. Episode 4, The Joy episode from the amazing world of Gumball, takes what should be a simple bad mood on a Monday morning and transforms it into a full-blown zombie outbreak, except instead of craving brains, everyone is infected with uncontrollable happiness. The episode begins at 7:53 a.m. on a Monday morning at the Watterson household, where Gumball and Darwin are experiencing the universal feeling that makes Mondays unbearable. They stomp into the dining room, where Richard and Anais are having breakfast, splash their food and milk all over their faces in the grumpiest way possible, dab themselves with napkins, and stomp right back out. Anais notices immediately that something is wrong with her brothers and suggests they need a hug, though Richard initially misunderstands and hugs her instead while continuing to play his handheld game. When she clarifies that she means Gumball and Darwin need the hug, Richard goes to investigate. The boys are repeatedly stomping and slamming the front door when Richard asks what the problem is. Gumball responds with pure grumpiness that it's Monday, as if that single word explains everything wrong with the universe. Richard offers them a regular hug, but Gumball refuses because everything on Monday is crummy and there's no point in trying to fix it. This is when Richard introduces the concept of a wonder hug, which he describes as being filled with all the love and happiness in the world. Even this sounds crummy to Gumball in his Monday state of mind. Richard doesn't take no for an answer though. He takes a deep breath and gives them what he calls a wonder hug, and the result is spectacular in the most ridiculous way possible. A rainbow mushroom cloud explodes out of the Watterson household with sparkles spreading everywhere, like Richard just detonated a happiness bomb on his children. By 09:01 a.m., Gumball and Darwin are walking down the school hallway, and something strange has happened. Darwin admits he still feels grumpy, but notices he's smiling for some reason. Gumball questions why Darwin is smiling if he feels grumpy, and Darwin points out that Gumball is heel-clicking as he walks. Neither of them understands why their bodies are doing things that don't match their mood. The school hallway showcases Miss Simeon in her typical Monday morning mood, which is to say she's making everyone else miserable. She tells Boebert to run because he's late for class, then immediately tells him not to run in the halls. This impossible command causes Boebert to have a complete system malfunction where he assesses his personal level of utilities at 0%, declares his system obsolete, and engages self-destruct mode. He literally blows a fuse right there in the hallway. Miss Simeon then spots Banana Joe strutting down the hallway and with his peel down, which violates the dress code. She fixes his peel but gets some of his insides stuck in the gap, and Joe's face briefly becomes live action to show his pain. Miss Simeon continues her Monday morning routine of making everything worse by walking past a bulletin board that has a cheerful drawing of children playing happily in the sea. She takes it upon herself to draw a shark fin in the water, which makes the children in the drawing turn and look at it unhappily. She heads to her office where she watches various CCTV cameras showing students and staff exhibiting depressed behavior throughout the school. Rocky is crying while mopping the floors. Terry opens a photocopier lid and drops her entire face onto the scanner, creating duplicates of her miserable expression. The eggheads are miserably banging their heads together, cracking each other's shells in the process. Miss Simeon breathes in deeply and says she loves the smell of despair on a Monday morning, but feels something is missing from her perfect misery tableau. She presses play on a cassette player that starts playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, which adds the perfect soundtrack to everyone's suffering. She drinks from her coffee mug, which has a sad face printed on the bottom of it, but then she spots something on the cameras that makes her spit coffee out through her nose. On one of the screens, Gumball and Darwin are walking to class, looking quite happy, which completely ruins her Monday morning despair fest. At 10:28 a.m. in Miss Simeon's classroom, Gumball has a massive smile plastered on his face that he cannot control. Darwin, who is also smiling, warns Gumball to stop because he can feel Miss Simeon's eyes burning the back of his head. When Darwin turns around, Miss Simeon is staring at them through a hole she has literally burned through Terry's face with her glare. Sarah's head has melted and is boiling from the intensity of Miss Simeon's anger at their happiness. Gumball tries to explain it's not his fault, but his words come out in auto-tuned singing, where he says his cheeks are begging him to stop, but his heart says to keep smiling. Miss Simeon storms over and demands to know how he dares to sing in her class. Darwin attempts to apologize and explain in auto-tuned singing that something strange might be happening to them since this morning. But Gumball quickly covers his mouth to shut him up. Miss Simeon asks what is wrong with them, and Gumball responds in more auto-tuned singing that if joy like this is wrong, then he doesn't want to feel right. Darwin has to jam his fin against Gumball's cheek to finally shut him up. Miss Simeon cannot comprehend how they could possibly be in such a good mood. On a Monday morning in the middle of a surprise test, Gumball takes Darwin's fin and sticks it in the middle of Darwin's face, making it look like he has a long nose. This simple sight makes Gumball laugh so hard that he starts coughing up a vibrant rainbow-colored fluid right there in the classroom. Miss Simeon's expression shifts to shock as she witnesses this rainbow vomit, and the camera smashes directly into her face. The scene cuts to Principal Brown's office, where he's standing in front of a recording camera on a tripod, pretending to have a serious conversation with an imaginary student in trouble. He's in the middle of pretending to fight the air when Miss Simeon opens the door and catches him. There's an awkward beat of silence. Miss Simeon closes the door and opens it again, and this time Principal Brown has magically repositioned himself in his chair with the camera sitting innocently on his desk. He asks Miss Simeon what he can do for her as if nothing happened. She gets close to him and announces, there's a disease spreading through the school. Principal Brown is confused and asks what she means. Miss Simeon declares it's an outbreak, specifically an outbreak of joy. Principal Brown's response is to say he's not implying what she said sounds crazy, but then he starts flailing around in his chair, making weird noises, faces, and poses to demonstrate what crazy actually looks like. Miss Simeon remains completely unimpressed as he continues this performance for several more seconds. When he finally stops, he admits that now that he said it out loud, it does sound a little crazy. This makes Miss Simeon shriek in frustration, and she grabs the camera, declaring she will prove it to him. As she leaves, Principal Brown calls out for her to wait and not play the tape, then adds softly that if she does play it, she should please not let it get on the internet because people's lives have been ruined by things like that. At 11:06 a.m., Miss Simeon is recording herself on the camera in the nurse's office, referring to herself as Dr. Simeon and calling it her log. She says the subject's state is getting worse and the disease has distorted their faces into a hideous grimace. She turns the camera to show Gumball and Darwin, who have huge smiles on their faces with dilated pupils. Joan, the school nurse, tells Miss Simeon there's nothing wrong with these kids and they're just smiling because they're happy. She also points out that Miss Simeon is not actually a doctor. Miss Simeon insists the happiness itself is the disease, then makes a long fart sound at Joan before turning to Gumball. She tells him to try and stop smiling, which Gumball agrees to do. Miss Simeon tells Joan this should prove her point. Gumball tries to pull his lower lip down to look unhappy, and Miss Simeon tells him to try harder. Gumball tries so hard that he rips his entire mouth off his face. He has an idea and puts his mouth back on upside down, creating a frown. Miss Simeon seems satisfied for a moment, but then Gumball's entire face and mouth rotate until his expression goes right back to being smiley again. Miss Simeon declares this is proof the children are diseased and claims it's scientific. Joan responds that what she just witnessed was a lot of things ending in icker including graphic, idiotic, sick, and horrific, but it certainly was not scientific. Darwin chimes in that he thought the whole thing was fin-flapping-tastic. At 15:33 p.m., Miss Simeon is still recording on the camera, saying the subjects seem to be getting worse, but no one takes her seriously. Joan suggests from off-screen that maybe it's because Miss Simeon is full of it. Miss Simeon signs out as Professor Simeon, and Joan starts to correct her that she's not a professor either, but gets cut off. The recording shows static, then Miss Simeon is shining a flashlight directly into Gumball's eyes, which now have very dilated and puppy dog-like pupils. She points out to Joan how weird their eyes look. Joan suggests maybe it's because Miss Simeon has been shining a flashlight into them for half an hour. Miss Simeon seems genuinely surprised and asks what time it really is. At 16:06 p.m., a timestamp appears and literally knocks Miss Simeon down. She pants while getting back up and pushing down the timestamp like it's an actual object in her way. She insists it's not just the flashlight and tells Joan to look at their faces. She waves at Darwin and asks if anyone is there. The perspective switches to Darwin's point of view, and Miss Simeon has transformed into a live-action, color-changing sock monkey, while the nurse has become a candy cane. Miss Simeon continues trying to get Darwin's attention, while Darwin turns to look at Gumball, who appears as a live-action version of himself, except his eyes, eyebrows, and whiskers remain animated. His mouth has been replaced with actual human lips. Gumball asks Darwin if he can see what he's seeing. The perspective exits Darwin's hallucination and returns to normal animation. Darwin announces that the cuddle monkey says it wants a kiss. Both Gumball and Darwin lunge forward trying to kiss Miss Simeon, who repeatedly tells them to stop and not do that. She pinches Gumball's lips together and yells about no familiarity. When they get up and approach her again, she backs up in front of the infirmary door, telling them to get back. She starts throwing jars at them to keep them away, then opens one jar and throws the liquid directly at them. Joan calls out from inside the infirmary, asking what Miss Simeon is doing. Miss Simeon responds that she's throwing water at them. Gumball and Darwin squeak happily as the liquid hits them. Joan informs her, that's not water, it's cough syrup, and more importantly, that's not how you treat students. By 16:36 p.m., Gumball and Darwin have been placed in beds in the infirmary, still smiling their massive smiles. Miss Simeon records on the camera that she had no other choice but to put the subjects into quarantine and their state is deteriorating. She says she will soon have proof of their infection and that she resolved her difference of opinion with the medical staff. The camera shows Joan with a piece of tape over her mouth, which she pulls off. Miss Simeon signs out as research supervisor Lucy Simeon. Joan, who is standing near the hallway, questions the supervisor title and calls Miss Simeon a super nut job. She announces she's not going to watch Miss Simeon torture children for being happy and she's getting Principal Brown. As Joan leaves and closes the door, Miss Simeon declares she'll conduct her experiments without her. Joan yells back through the door that Miss Simeon is not qualified to conduct experiments. Miss Simeon mocks Joan by making faces, and Joan somehow sees this and yells back that Miss Simeon is ugly enough without making faces. Miss Simeon is confused about how Joan could see that. Gumball and Darwin begin laughing hysterically in their beds. They cough up rainbows, stars, hearts, bunnies, and sparkles before falling completely unconscious. The heart monitor flatlines with a long beep, then the monitor itself becomes rainbow-colored and sparkly, playing a cheerful tune instead of the normal flatline sound. Miss Simeon's eyes go wide and she screams that this is proof. Meanwhile, Principal Brown and Joan are walking down the hallway toward the office. Principal Brown is asking if Miss Simeon makes faces like this, and he demonstrates by mocking her. Joan says no, it's more like this, and she makes her own mocking face. She mentions that Miss Simeon is giving herself all these titles and questions what a senior mega consultant supervirologist even is. They open the office door and catch Miss Simeon dancing in celebration. She yells at them that she was right. telling them to look at Gumball and Darwin. They all rush to the infirmary door window and look inside at the unconscious boys. Principal Brown expresses concern about the children and asks Miss Simeon if she realizes what this means. Miss Simeon looks worried for a moment, then smiles and points at Principal Brown, declaring he was wrong, then points at Joan, declaring she was wrong, and finally announces that she was right. She starts dancing again in celebration. While Miss Simeon is busy dancing and gloating, Gumball and Darwin wake up in their beds, but they're different now. They've transformed into what the episode calls huggers, infected carriers of the joy virus. They immediately jump onto Principal Brown, knocking him to the ground and infecting him with direct contact. Rainbow fluid splatters onto the camera lens. Principal Brown gets back up, but he's laughing in a creepy, unnatural way that makes it clear he's been infected. Miss Simeon and Joan back away into the hallway as Gumball, Darwin, and the newly infected Principal Brown approach them with their arms outstretched. In a moment of pure self-preservation, Miss Simeon grabs Joan and throws her directly into the group of infected people. Joan gets infected immediately and joins the huggers. Miss Simeon runs into her office and tries to close the door as they attempt to get in. They manage to tickle her a bit through the gap. She screams and slaps their hands away before finally getting the door closed. They break the glass window in the door and reach their arms through, trying to grab her. Miss Simeon screams and backs away toward her desk. She looks at the CCTV footage on her monitors, and her expression turns to horror. She realizes the infection is spreading throughout the entire school. The surveillance cameras show the contagion spreading in real time across different locations. In the cafeteria, Gumball and Darwin enter and infect both Alan and Boebert, while Carmen and Tobias run away to avoid them. In another location, Rocky is spraying something under his arm, likely deodorant. Joan jumps onto him and knocks him down. Rocky looks at the spray out of can and says the product really works before becoming infected and laughing. In the hallway, Boebert shorts out the electrical power, plunging the entire school into darkness. On another camera, Alan infects the eggheads, Juke, and Carmen in the darkened hallway. When the huggers touch Carmen, she pops like a balloon, splattering rainbow fluid all over the camera lens. Elsewhere in the hallway, Idaho is running away from Terry, Jamie, and Masami, who are all infected and closing in on him. Tobias steps forward and tells the ladies to contaminate him, but they completely avoid him and go for Leslie instead, knocking the flower boy down and infecting him. Tobias sighs and says it's typical that they chose the flower boy over him. In another part of the hallway, Boebert is now riding an electric floor scrubber and chasing Anton. Gumball and Banana Joe chase Penny into the library and corner her with nowhere to run. Gumball pushes Banana Joe out of the way, and Penny cries out his name, begging him not to do this. Gumball infects Penny anyway, and then kicks Banana Joe away. Penny starts laughing her infected laugh. Back in Miss Simeon's office, she watches all of this happening on the monitors and realizes it has infected everyone. She takes a deep breath and in slow motion screams a long drawn-out no. Still in slow motion, she punches the file cabinet, hits it with a chair, pulls books out from the bookcase, and breaks off one of the shelves. She flips over her desk, but it somehow lands exactly where it was before, completely upright. She tips everything off the desk and flips it upside down. This time, she knocks over a fan, which causes a book to fall and hit the cassette player's play button. Moonlight Sonata begins playing through the speakers. Principal Brown, who is outside the office trying to break in, hears the music. His infected smile drops and transforms into a sad face. The music has cured him. He immediately runs away from the other infected. Miss Simeon realizes what just happened and declares the music is the cure. She looks up at the intercom speaker in her office and understands that the PA system is their only chance to cure everyone in the school. At 18:20 p.m., Miss Simeon is slowly walking down an empty hallway, carrying the cassette player and staying vigilant. The lockers are hanging open and there's rainbow fluid splattered on the walls and floor, evidence of the infected that have passed through. She spots Anais in a corner facing the wall, and it sounds like the little girl is crying. Miss Simeon approaches cautiously and tells Anais to stop crying, assuring her that she's not infected and to just look at her face. Anais turns around, revealing she has been infected too. Laughing maniacally, Anais runs directly at Miss Simeon, who screams. Anais tumbles into an open locker, which Miss Simeon quickly slams shut. She tells the trapped Anais there's no running in the halls, maintaining her teacher authority even during an outbreak. Miss Simeon turns to another hallway and sees it's completely filled with infected students and staff. She realizes there's no other way through except to blend in. She tries to pull her face into a smile, struggling against every instinct in her body, but eventually succeeds in creating a fake happy expression. She walks down the hallway filled with infected people, attempting to blend in by saying things like rainbows and peace. Susie, who is infected, makes her usual sound at Miss Simeon. Miss Simeon copies the sound back to maintain her cover. Then she spots Banana Joe strutting down the hallway with his peel down again. Miss Simeon tries to resist the urge. She really does, but she cannot help herself. She fixes his peel and screams about the dress code. This immediately catches everyone's attention and they all turn to look at her. The infected realize she's not one of them and start chasing her. Miss Simeon runs around the corner and encounters Terry, who tries to infect her with a hug. Miss Simeon rips both of Terry's arms completely off and keeps running. As she dodges more infected people in the hallway, she runs into Joan, who also tries to infect her. Miss Simeon literally sticks Joan to the wall like a poster and continues her escape. She runs into another hallway and comes face to face with an infected Tina, the massive T-Rex. Miss Simeon screams, Tina roars and backs Miss Simeon into the lockers. Some of Tina's rainbow drool drips onto Miss Simeon as the dinosaur tries to infect her, but Tina's arms are too short to reach. This gives Miss Simeon just enough time to slip past Tina and keep running. She turns another corner and crashes directly into Tobias. She screams, and he smiles awkwardly at her. There's a beat of silence between them. Miss Simeon then slams his locker door on him repeatedly, knocking him to the ground. Tobias complains about the pain and asks what that was for. Miss Simeon apologizes but says it's his own fault because he's so multicolored that she thought he was one of the infected. Miss Simeon continues running as everyone approaches from around the corner behind her. She finally reaches Principal Brown's office, rushes inside, puts the cassette player near the microphone, and starts rewinding the tape. She keeps saying, "Come on," hurrying the tape to rewind as everyone gathers outside the door. The tape finishes rewinding and she says yes, but just as she's about to press play and broadcast the cure to the entire school, Gumball and Darwin emerge from the darkness behind her in the office. She realizes they were hiding in there the whole time and says they have to be kidding. She screams as the image shows everyone outside in the hallway closing in. The screen fades to black. The recording shows static, then cuts back to show Gumball and Darwin on top of Miss Simeon, who is now lying on the floor. The camera is still recording everything. Miss Simeon speaks directly to the camera, explaining that the joy is starting to get to her and infect her too. She says there's only one way to defeat it, and the person watching this video has to play a piece of music. She admits she doesn't actually know what the piece is called, but she can hum it. She tries to sing it, making sounds like da-da, but apologizes because she's not much of a singer. She tries again, but starts coughing. She apologizes again and says she's let everyone down. Her final words before succumbing to the infection are that this story came to a happy ending. She becomes infected and starts laughing maniacally before the video cuts to static. The camera tape then cuts to show Principal Brown back in his office from earlier in the episode, wielding and swinging a mop around like a weapon in his fantasy fight scene. He stops for a few seconds to catch his breath. then continues his imaginary battle as the episode ends with this ridiculous footage that Miss Simeon accidentally left on the recording. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have The Puppets from Season 5, Episode 36, The Puppets. The Puppets episode from The Amazing World of Gumball takes childhood nostalgia and transforms it into something genuinely unsettling by asking a simple question that most people try not to think about. What if the toys you abandoned actually remembered being left behind? The episode opens with Gumball and Darwin in the attic, packing away old toys for a garage sale. Darwin immediately questions why they have to give the toys away, pointing out that these toys have sentimental value and nobody else will love them the way they do. Gumball responds with brutal honesty, reminding Darwin that they locked these toys in the attic for 7 years. This single line establishes the entire horror premise of the episode, because 7 years is a long time to be forgotten in darkness, especially if you're conscious the entire time. Darwin finds a Smack-It toy in one of the boxes and wonders out loud why they ever stopped playing with it, calling it awesome. The toy's music starts playing and it begins saying things like "push me" and "hold me," but then its voice drops to a lower, distorted pitch as it says "squeeze me." Darwin explains they dropped it at some point and it never sounded as kid-friendly after that incident. He tosses it into a bag and moves on to their old digital pet, explaining they had to feed it and change its diaper. When he presses the button, the screen is completely blank. Darwin assumes it's just out of batteries and throws it into the box without a second thought. After he discards it, the words "clean me" appear on the digital pet's screen, suggesting it was actually awake and aware the whole time, just unable to communicate. Darwin then pulls out a Mighty Flies action figure, calling it the warrior that rules the sky. The toy immediately goes berserk, flying around and breaking everything while Gumball and Darwin cover themselves in panic. It flies out the window, cutting a wire and killing a bird in the process. Gumball switches to an advertiser voice and says Mighty Flies takes no responsibility for any limbs, eyes, or innocence lost while enjoying the Mighty Flies line of products. Gumball looks in the next box and his eyes widen in shock. He tells Darwin he has not seen them yet, and the answer is absolutely no. Darwin asks what he's talking about, and Gumball repeats his refusal even more insistently. Darwin grabs the box and looks inside, gasping when he discovers Grady, Frank, and Howdy. He starts to say they have to play with them, but Gumball cuts him off with an even stricter no. When Darwin asks why, Gumball explains they're too old to play with toys and dolls. Darwin argues that playing never goes out of date, but Gumball responds that playing with dolls means you'll never go out on a date. This makes Darwin pull a sad puppy face. Gumball tells him it's time to grow up, and Darwin sighs, admitting Gumball is right and he needs to learn how to let things go. Gumball says Darwin will thank him when his teenage years kick in. Darwin agrees, and Gumball exits the attic, slamming the door behind him. The moment Gumball is gone, Darwin giggles mischievously and pulls out the puppets, greeting them cheerfully. Frank and Howdy, being controlled by Darwin as a ventriloquist, greet him back. They all cough because of the dust that has been gathering on the puppets for 7 years. Darwin asks what the smell is, and Frank explains that morning breath can be quite bad when you've been asleep in a shoebox for 7 years. Howdy sarcastically says he's sure Darwin had a perfectly good reason to leave them in endless darkness with only dust mites for food, and their love for Darwin to keep them warm. Darwin's head gets flattened by an invisible force, and Howdy asks what that was. Darwin explains it was the weight of guilt, then inhales to restore his head to its normal shape. He apologizes, admitting they ditched the puppets the Christmas they got their first game console. Frank says it's okay because they still love Darwin. Howdy then asks if Darwin will never put them back in the box, and Darwin promises he will not. Frank asks if they will have fun forever and ever, and Darwin promises again. Howdy asks if Darwin will never take them off his hands again, and Darwin promises once more. These three promises become the chains that bind Darwin for the rest of the episode. The scene cuts to Darwin exiting the bathroom with the puppets on his hands, and they express horrendous shock at something. Darwin apologizes, but reminds them they made him promise never to take them off his hands. At the bus stop, Gumball and Darwin wait for the bus to arrive. When it does, Howdy encounters Rocky, who is driving the bus. Howdy says in a dreamy voice, asking where Rocky has been all his life. Rocky responds that he's been sitting there wondering what went wrong with his own life while eating cheese. Howdy asks for one ticket to Kiss Town. Romantic music starts playing as they get closer to Kiss, but Rocky realizes Darwin is making the music with his mouth. Rocky furiously asks what Darwin is doing, and Darwin nervously walks away. This distraction causes Rocky to drive directly into the path of a truck. All the students scream as they crash. The next scene shows Rocky horribly injured, serving students in the cafeteria. Darwin walks by blushing in embarrassment, and Howdy whispers for Rocky to call him. Rocky shakes his head in refusal. Darwin sits at a table and struggles to control the puppets while trying to eat his sandwich. Gumball enters and places his tray on the table. Darwin immediately hides the puppets under the table. Gumball mentions that the school bus is a total write-off, saying that's what happens when you put a 15-ton vehicle in the limp little hands of a ventriloquist dummy. He imitates Rocky by speaking like him and flailing his arms around. Frank and Howdy, still hidden under the table, pull angry expressions. Frank asks what's wrong with being a puppet. Howdy fires back at Gumball, saying big talk from someone so short that you can see his feet on his yearbook photo. And Gumball asks what Darwin's problem is and questions the weird voice. Frank responds that his problem is Gumball's butt is 3 times as wide as his shoulders, but his brain is half the size of his head. Gumball asks in disgust if there's anything else. Howdy says he could try to insult Gumball's face, but he thinks nature has already done enough damage. Gumball removes the meat from his hamburger and slaps Darwin across the face with it. Howdy comments that at least that solved the problem of eating without hands. The scene moves to the Watterson house, where Darwin is taking a bath, but still has the puppets on his hands. Frank asks who skinned those puppets, and Darwin quietly explains those are his socks and tells them to keep it down or Gumball will hear. Gumball immediately opens the bathroom door and asks if Darwin said something. Darwin nervously says no. Gumball asks who Darwin was talking to. The puppets struggle underwater, making gurgling noises, and Darwin insists he was talking to nobody. As Gumball pulls a suspicious expression, Darwin struggles to keep the puppets submerged in the water. He fails, and the puppets emerge quickly, gasping for air. Gumball says he knew it. Darwin reminds the puppets they do not even have lungs. Frank and Howdy realize this is true. Gumball says they have been over this before. Darwin exits the bathtub and tries to explain that the puppets are more than just toys, but Gumball interrupts, hiding from Darwin's feet and asking him to cover himself up first. Darwin blushes and apologizes, putting on his slippers. His feet are censored during this scene. Howdy insists they are more than just puppets. Gumball responds that only crazy people talk through puppets, along with people who want to make a living as a ventriloquist, so basically just crazy people. Frank says Gumball needs to play too because someone has to play with Grady. Gumball tells Darwin to just take the puppets off. Frank and Howdy refuse. Darwin uses the puppets to beat Gumball in the face. Frank says the fun will never end. Gumball yells for Darwin to stop. Frank shoves a toilet paper roll in Gumball's mouth. Frank asks what they are doing, and Gumball tries to thank Frank for removing the toilet paper. Howdy criticizes that the toilet paper is supposed to fold over, not under. Frank throws the toilet paper back into Gumball's mouth, this time folding it over properly. Howdy tells Frank to stop and hits him. Frank hits Howdy back and tells him to stop. Darwin yells for both of them to stop, but the puppets hit each other anyway. They both say ow and tell each other to stop. Then both puppets hit Darwin, causing him to slip and fall in the bathroom. Gumball grabs the shower head and points it at Darwin. triumphantly, but the showerhead produces no water. Gumball sighs and says Darwin used up all the water. Howdy grabs the rug from under Gumball, making him fall. Frank starts pushing the foot pedal of the trash can to repeatedly hit Gumball's face with the lid. Gumball seizes the puppets and pulls them off Darwin's hands, which causes Darwin to launch backward into the bathtub. Gumball, completely exhausted, tells Darwin that when he said, "Grow up," he did not mean go straight to the part where you're in a retirement home screaming at chairs and biting the nurses. The scene cuts to the front yard where Gumball is about to place the puppets in a box and throw them in the trash can. Darwin is desperately trying to stop him by, holding on to his legs. Darwin begs Gumball not to do this, insisting the puppets are alive. Gumball strictly says no, they are not, and he puts the puppets in the box and closes it. Darwin starts voicing howdy, saying no, not the shoebox. He then voices Frank, saying it's almost as dark as Gumball's soul in there. Gumball is surprised by the voices for a moment, but then realizes Darwin is still the one voicing them in an attempt to convince him. Darwin realizes his trick did not work and says, "Oh," in his normal voice. Gumball tells Darwin they are not the ones who need help and walks away. Darwin turns his head down, blushing and sweating, then exits back into the house, looking depressed. The scene shows the Watterson house suddenly transitioning to nighttime. While Gumball is sleeping soundly in his bedroom, something happens in the front yard. The trash can falls over and Howdy emerges, now genuinely alive and speaking with her actual voice instead of being ventriloquized by Darwin. She asks Frank if he's okay, saying he does not look quite like himself. Frank, whose spirit has possessed a food container instead of his puppet body, says in his real voice that maybe there's something he has not digested properly. He vomits out a rat. Howdy expresses surprise and tells Frank he's in the wrong body. Frank realizes his mistake and his spirit transfers to his correct puppet body. He says okay and suggests they go. Howdy and Frank drag Grady toward the house. Grady's spirit is still unconscious at this point. They open the front door and sternly enter the house. Frank says the bedroom is just at the top of the stairs. Howdy tells him to wait and grabs a baseball bat. Gumball wakes up and walks down the stairs, frightened by the clanking and banging noises he hears. When he reaches the source of the noise, he discovers Howdy has been destroying his game console along with his The Tale of Zelmore cartridge. Howdy immediately hides when Gumball appears. Gumball gasps and says no in a heartbroken voice. He performs cardiopulmonary resuscitation on the broken console while panting nervously. He begs the console to breathe and asks what Howdy has done. Tears well up in his eyes. Howdy reveals herself and says they taught that thing a lesson for replacing them. Gumball says he's not talking to Howdy. The scene reveals Darwin sleeping in his bed, unwillingly holding the puppets. Even in his sleep, the puppets speak by themselves without Darwin's voice. Gumball says he's talking to Darwin and asks why Darwin fished them out of the trash. Frank reminds Gumball that Darwin made a promise never to abandon them. Gumball responds that you cannot make a promise to an object, comparing it to getting married to a fridge or keeping a secret for a shoe. He demands Darwin stop talking through those puppets. Howdy says Darwin cannot stop because he lives in their world now. Frank adds that if Gumball wants to see Darwin again, he too will have to come and play. Both puppets close their eyes, causing Darwin to fall on the floor. The puppets transfer themselves to their world. Gumball gasps and tries to wake Darwin up, but Darwin will not respond. Gumball looks sternly at Grady and picks him up. He places his hand inside the puppet, which summons Grady's consciousness. Grady thanks Master Gumball and says he missed him greatly all these years. He asks if they should go find Master Darwin. Gumball asks how Grady knows what happened. Grady explains that just because he has been unable to talk does not mean he has been unable to see. Gumball says to remind him to apologize to Aeneas dolls because they're right next to his underpants drawer and they have seen a lot. Grady puts his hand out and Gumball places his hand on top. This summons them both to the puppet's world. Gumball realizes his hand has transformed into the form of a puppet's hand. He asks what happened to him, then realizes his entire body has become a puppet. He screams in horror. Grady, who also appears as a real puppet now, advises Gumball not to look down if the hand transformation worried him. The scene reveals two humans in green screen suits controlling both Gumball and Grady like actual puppets. Gumball and Grady begin to look down at the humans. Gumball nervously tells himself to focus on the task at hand, then corrects himself by saying not hand, but task ahead. Grady shushes him and asks if Gumball can hear something. Howdy's voice is heard off-screen chanting that the fun will never end. Grady says they should go this way. Gumball and Grady try to move but struggle to walk because of their abnormally thin puppet legs. Gumball comments on all the things they imagined when they used to play. The scene introduces High Five Guy, who is smiling. Gumball greets him enthusiastically and slaps him in the face instead of giving him a high five. High Five Guy sighs and pulls a disturbed expression. Gumball gasps and points out Sammy Sunscream, the screaming sun. Sammy Sunscream appears off-screen, screaming in agony while shining down on Gumball and High Five Guy. Gumball walks past a tree and identifies it as the Tree of Permanent Happiness. The tree says it wishes it could feel other things more. Gumball gasps and points out Birdplane Bird, which is a creature fused from a plane and a bird. The creature crows. Grady asks Gumball to please stay focused because Master Darwin needs him. Gumball agrees, but then gets distracted by Keyboard Dog. Keyboard Dog appears and barks 3 times, then plays the keyboard that is built into his body. The scene changes to Gumball and Grady standing outside a house where Darwin and the other puppets are located. Grady announces they have arrived. Inside the house, Howdy and Frank are singing a song called The Fun Will Never End. Howdy sings about dancing around and singing a song, claiming the fun will never stop. Frank sings that they have fun all day long because it says so on the clock. Howdy sings about wearing a hat, no hat, or 2 hats if you prefer. Frank adds that they only have 2 hats, so those are your only options. Howdy tells Darwin to put the hats on and bake a cake. Frank says while Darwin waits for the cake to bake, he should begin preparing a second cake. Howdy slaps a cake off Darwin's fin and tells him he did it wrong with that first cake. Awkward silence occurs as the cake melts on the floor. Frank announces it's Darwin's turn with the balloon, and both puppets sing that the fun will never end. Howdy sings about organizing a spoon. Frank sings about counting to the funnest number, and a character called Number 7 appears singing that the fun will never end. Howdy sings about going to your favorite corner. Darwin sings that he does not know what's going on and he's not sure this is that fun. The puppets keep singing that the fun will never end regardless of what Darwin says. Gumball opens the door and imitates a record scratch noise with his mouth. Howdy asks what that was. Gumball explains it was a dramatic record scratch sound, then tells Darwin they have to go because this is all a trap, to keep him playing with them forever. A loud dissonant piano chord sounds as Grady enters maliciously. Grady announces that Gumball is wrong. He explains there are 3 puppets, but Darwin only has 2 hands, so this was actually a trap for Gumball all along. Grady says dum 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 for dramatic effect. Gumball asks what that was. Grady explains it was a dramatic music cue, but admits it would have been better if his voice was not so flat. Grady closes the door as he goes into the darkness. The 2 other puppets close their door as they exit. Gumball and Darwin scream and tremble like they are being possessed. Grady says they always used to play with the puppets. The door in front of the camera shuts, and the scene transitions to show Gumball and Darwin in the form of hand puppets. Grady, Howdy, and Frank all stare menacingly down at them in giant sizes. Grady announces it's now their turn to play with Gumball and Darwin. Howdy tells them to play along and not make a fuss. Frank says they will come up with things to do. Grady says they will make them dance and fight. Howdy adds they will smear themselves with worms all night. Grady says they will make them eat toenails and grease. Frank says they will make them wear an itchy fleece. Grady says They will see if they break when they bend, and all three declare the fun will never end. Grady notices Darwin is holding some string and asks what that is. Darwin responds that it's the end of the fun. Grady gasps as Darwin pulls the string from his arm, causing it to fall off. All the puppets gasp as Gumball and Darwin fall and grow their legs back to normal size. Gumball yells for them to run. As they run away, Darwin pulls more strings, making Howdy's right eye sever and Frank's abdomen mangle up. The puppets scream in the distance. Darwin asks if it's just him or if that reaction was kind of underwhelming. Gumball agrees, saying he thought everything would explode or something. Darwin asks if this is all imaginary anyway. Gumball says that's a good point. The puppets scream much louder, and everything in their world explodes around them. Grady screams that he will have his revenge. The scene transitions to Gumball and Darwin sitting on the stairs normally while Nicole runs her yard sale. A kid named Billy walks up and notices the puppets packed in a box. Nicole asks her sons if they are sure they are okay with her giving away their old toys. As Billy picks Grady up from the box, Grady comes alive behind Nicole and attacks Billy, hitting him several times and causing him to scream. Gumball and Darwin respond they are pretty sure, and the episode ends with Billy being assaulted by the vengeful puppet. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have The Signal from Season 4, Episode 23. The Signal episode from The Amazing World of Gumball takes the concept of technical difficulties and transforms it into an existential nightmare where the characters slowly realize they are trapped inside a television broadcast that is malfunctioning. The episode begins at the Elmore Mall with Gumball and Darwin shopping for hats. The screen stutters briefly, which seems like a simple technical glitch at first. Darwin explains he's just trying on hats because he feels his look is missing something. Gumball points out that Darwin's look is missing everything except shoes. Darwin responds that exactly. Step 1 was shoes and step 2 is a hat. Gumball corrects him that step 2 is not a hat and step 1 should actually be pants. Darwin puts on a yellow spiky hat and asks what Gumball thinks. Gumball starts to respond but freezes mid-word. Darwin takes this as an answer and agrees the hat is too desperate for attention. Darwin takes off the hat and looks for another one while Gumball touches his face and looks around his surroundings, clearly confused about what just happened to him. Darwin puts on a dark gray hat and asks how it looks. Gumball says that one makes him look kind of, then freezes again with his mouth stuck open, making an extended sound. Darwin interprets this as criticism and agrees, saying the hat is too thinking it's cool but lonely at school. Gumball shakes his head and looks around, asking what just happened. Darwin puts on a big brown hat that covers his entire face and asks about this one. Gumball says it makes him look. Then static appears and Gumball's face transforms into that of a live-action bearded man for a moment before returning to normal. Darwin says the hat is too Canadian and returns it to the box. He pulls out a very small hat and places it on his head, saying he really likes this one, but asking if it makes him look like he has a fat head. Gumball tries to respond but gets stuck, making an extended sound while static fills the screen. Darwin tells him not to spare his feelings and just tell him the truth. The static continues and Darwin's face glitches, growing a double chin. His face glitches again to show an angry expression. Darwin says, "Fine," and walks away, upset. Gumball finally unsticks and says he likes it, asking where Darwin is going. Darwin responds he's going to the food court if that's okay with Gumball. Gumball tries to say no, but gets stuck stuttering. Darwin misinterprets this and says, "Fine, if Gumball thinks he has such a fat head, maybe he'll go work out instead." Tears form in Darwin's eyes. Gumball finally completes his sentence, saying he did not mean that, asking Darwin to wait, and questioning why Darwin is mad at him. He runs after Darwin and tries to tell him to hold on, but freezes again while looking directly at the camera. He starts crying, and static occurs. Gumball's head and body fall onto the ground while his legs float in the air. Gumball notices this happening and asks what is going on. His legs reconnect, and he gets back up, running after Darwin while calling out to him. A lost signal message displays on screen. The view zooms out to reveal this is the Watterson family television. Richard is clunking the TV and grunting, saying there's only one thing to do. Gumball enters, asking if Richard has seen Darwin, but Richard is busy pushing the couch into the kitchen. Gumball asks what his dad is doing. Richard explains the TV was being weird, so he's moving the couch so he can watch the second most interesting thing in the house. Gumball asks us what that is. Richard says the fridge and laughs, mentioning pickles. Gumball face palms at this response. Gumball finds Darwin, who is about to do pull-ups in a doorway. Gumball tells Darwin he does not have to do that because he's not fat at all. Darwin breathes heavily, trying to do a pull-up, while Gumball slowly goes down instead. Darwin asks what Gumball is doing. Gumball explains that Darwin was not really going up, so he thought he would go down to make Darwin feel better. Darwin says whatever in frustration. When the metal bar falls off the door, Darwin gets on a bench press. Gumball tells him to wait and says he should at least spot Darwin for safety. Darwin scoffs, but agrees. He takes a deep breath, grabs the barbell and tries to lift it. He counts 1, then 3/4, then a half, then a third, before yelling for Gumball to take it. Gumball tries to say okay, but gets stuck, making an extended sound with static. Darwin drops the barbell and it falls on his face, causing his shoes to pop off and break the window. After a while, Darwin manages to lift the barbell off his face. Gumball finally completes his sentence, saying he's got it, but then accidentally pushes the barbell between Darwin's head and legs, causing the bench press to break in half. In the bathroom, Gumball puts a bandage on Darwin's head while Darwin crosses his arms, looking angry. Gumball apologizes, saying he never meant to say, Darwin's head was fat and his face looks great, though a little scrunched up. He says Darwin looks much better with a smile and repeatedly tells him to come on while trying to tickle him. Darwin resists at first, but eventually smiles and giggles. He inhales and smiles properly. Gumball starts to say that's much better, but static occurs and Darwin's face data moshes into a horrifying, distorted image. Gumball covers his mouth and gags. Darwin asks what's wrong. Gumball says nothing and suggests they just hug it out. Darwin starts to say okay, but his voice glitches and static appears. Darwin's pupils transform into real human eyes. Gumball screams about Darwin's face and says he's going to be sick, asking Darwin to get up. Darwin asks if Gumball could be any more insulting. He opens the bathroom door and announces he's turning his back on Gumball, but gets stuck repeating the letter Y while static occurs. Darwin then leaves. Gumball tries to explain but sighs and says there's something weird going on. Gumball sits down to write an apology letter. He writes Dear Darwin but decides against it and throws the paper away. He tries Dearest Buddy but throws that away too. He pulls out a typewriter and starts typing To My Best. Companion but throws the typewriter away. He pulls out a laptop and types a full letter explaining Darwin is not only his brother, but his best friend, that Darwin is not ugly and his face is fine, that Gumball feels horrible about what happened, and hopes they don't stop being friends over this. Tears form in Gumball's eyes as he types that he hates to see Darwin upset, because when Darwin cries, he cries. He ends the letter saying they should never let this happen again, and signs it from his best buddy Gumball. He then says he's not sure about it and prepares to throw the computer. Darwin enters and asks what that is. Gumball nervously explains it's a letter he wrote for Darwin. Darwin asks if Gumball is going to read it. Gumball reluctantly agrees and breathes in deeply. He starts reading Dear Darwin, but glitching occurs and the words that come out are completely different. What Darwin hears is that he is but ugly. His face is horrible. Gumball hopes they stop being friends over this, and Gumball will see him never. Darwin says he's done enough storming out for one day and thinks it's Gumball's turn to leave. Gumball tries to speak, but Darwin slams the door in his face. Gumball says he'll take that as a no. Richard is shown crying while holding the TV remote. He apologizes to the TV, saying they've had so many good times, but he cannot bear to see it like this and it would be cruel to go on any longer. He turns off the TV and says goodbye while hugging it and crying. Gumball walks up confused and asks what's wrong. Richard says he just turned the TV off and hugs Gumball. Gumball asks if he can speak to Richard. Richard jumps up in glee and says, "Sure." Gumball asks if Richard has noticed anything weird lately, like strange things happening. Richard starts glitching and suddenly speaks in Spanish, saying something about Desconsuela needing a doctor and it being her kidneys. Gumball asks what he said. Richard glitches again and speaks in a different voice about a new speedboat. Gumball asks if Richard is trying to be funny. Richard makes a laugh track sound with his mouth. Darwin enters and sighs, telling Gumball he just realized there's no point being angry upstairs by himself. Gumball nervously asks if Darwin is not mad anymore. Darwin says no, he still is, but he's going to be mad somewhere. Gumball can see it. He pulls an angry face to demonstrate. Gumball says he thinks he knows why Darwin is so mad and explains something weird is going on. He inhales deeply and tries to say what he wants to say, but glitches repeatedly, unable to get the words out. Darwin tells him to take his time and say what he needs to say. Gumball tries again, but glitches. A lost signal sign appears and everything goes black. The screen turns back on to reveal the room has been plunged into complete chaos. Darwin has jumped onto Gumball's head and is slapping it repeatedly. Gumball is screaming in pain. Richard is panicking. Tables and chairs have been knocked down, all over the floor. Darwin screams that he's had enough and asks if Gumball is making fun of him, demanding he just tell him what he wants to say. Richard screams for Darwin to stop and get off Gumball. Gumball screams back, asking how he can tell Darwin anything if Darwin is beating him. Richard starts making strange faces while speaking gibberish, which stops the fighting. Gumball takes Darwin off his head and tells him to look, explaining something is not right because their dad has gone weird too. Richard says he has not, and that was just a diversion to make them stop fighting. He announces it worked and says he has an idea. If they make up, he'll take them to buy him an ice cream, then corrects himself to say their ice cream, then settles on taking them to buy all of them ice cream. Darwin shrugs in acceptance. Richard says good, and they should go. Darwin mentions Gumball can have his ice cream since Darwin should be dieting. Gumball thanks him. Darwin grunts in response. Richard is driving to get ice cream. Gumball tries to say something, but Darwin is sulking. Richard suggests they play a game to lighten the mood. Darwin sarcastically asks if they should play what offensive thing will Gumball say to Darwin next. Richard offers that Darwin is so chubby his butt cheeks are in different time zones. Darwin rolls his eyes. Richard tries another, saying Darwin is so dumb he deleted the cookies on his computer to try to lose weight. Darwin giggles, but quickly returns to sulking. Richard tries one more, saying Darwin is so ugly the sweat runs down the back of his head to avoid his face. He laughs. Gumball and Darwin start laughing together, but the scene glitches and skips forward to Richard getting gas at a station. Darwin asks, guess what just happened? Richard says he just needed to fill up and they'll be back on the road in 5 minutes. Darwin clarifies he does not mean that. Richard glitches. Darwin realizes Gumball was right and something weird is going on. The background glitches and the car is suddenly back on the road. Darwin says it happened again. Gumball says Darwin believes him now and reminds him he would never make Darwin feel bad on purpose. He hugs Darwin and asks if they're okay now. Darwin says yes, they're good. Gumball calls out to their dad. The kids look at the front seat and realize there is no driver. They both scream for their dad. Richard is still glitching back at the gas station. Gumball, softly and terrified, says there's nobody driving the car. Gumball and Darwin inhale as if about to scream, but are cut off by footage of 2 baby birds screaming. Gumball says he's going to take the wheel. Darwin tells him he cannot because he has to keep his seatbelt on. Gumball asks why. Darwin starts to explain but gets cut off by a claymation video of a car crashing into a wall, followed by a picture of a see-through human head. A voice says, "Massive relief from headache." A realistic watermelon explosion video appears with a voice saying explosive freshness. Everything goes back to normal. Gumball says fair point. Gumball and Darwin scream in shrill voices. Gumball yells to watch out. Darwin responds that he is watching and that's all there is to do. They keep screaming glitch, then the scene changes to them on the slope of a tall cliff. They both say okay in a calmer tone. Darwin raises his arms as the car is about to go down. Gumball asks what he's doing. Darwin says he does not know, but it just feels right. The car goes forward and down the cliff. Just as a character named Patrick gets into his car, they crash into it. Patrick's scream is cut off by a scene of ice cream being poured into a cone. Gumball tells Darwin he has a plan. Darwin asks what it is. Gumball says the plan is for Darwin to come up with a plan because Gumball does not have one. Darwin says, okay, but there's one small flaw. Gumball asks what? Darwin whispers that he does not have a plan either. They both scream but are cut off by a video of plastic clowns turning their heads. Gumball and Darwin imitate the clowns. Gumball says they're going to crash, but as the car crashes through Joyful Burger, the scene glitches to a Joyful Burger commercial with a voice saying they're crashing through prices this week at Joyful Burger. Back in the car, Gumball and Darwin's screams are muffled because their mouths are filled with fast food. Gumball asks what just happened. Gumball and Darwin resume their shrill screaming as the car crashes through a parking lot gate, nearly hitting pedestrians. As they reach the mall, the car slows down and stops at a phone booth, lightly touching it and causing the phone to fall off. Gumball says they made it, and he's glad that's over. The scene tears off to reveal a Panther-themed commercial with a voice saying, "Panther treads are made to keep you rolling." The scene switches back to show their car now running on Panther legs. Gumball screams in terror. The car drives through the mall and glitches to a stop just before they hit Larry. Larry faints. A news anchor named Kip Schlesinger appears on a TV screen, announcing that the town of Elmore has recently been suffering from satellite broadcast issues. He assures viewers they are working on the problem and asks people to bear with them while the TV glitches to a lost signal sign. Gumball asks why the broadcast issues are affecting them, but he glitches and the screen goes to a blank lost signal message. They look at each other worriedly. Darwin asks if Gumball is thinking what he's thinking. Gumball says, if what happens on TV happens to them, does that mean they're on? The scene glitches to show the Wattersons sitting at their table in the dining room. Richard says they all got home and everything was fine. The boys made up, everyone is safe, and all's well that ends well. Everyone laughs except Gumball and Darwin do it in a nervous manner just before the episode glitches out to the credits, leaving the horrifying implication that they are characters trapped inside a malfunctioning television broadcast. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have The Night from Season 4, Episode 31. The Night episode from The Amazing World of Gumball presents dreams as a window into the deepest fears and anxieties of Elmore's citizens, narrated by an anthropomorphic moon that watches over the sleeping town. The episode begins as darkness falls across Elmore and the moon starts narrating in rhyme. The residents begin settling down for bed. Terry yawns and erases her eyes, drawing a sleep mask on herself. The moon explains that people start to drift into bed unless they're on the nighttime shift. Larry can be seen working his nighttime shift, smiling, but with one of his eyes twitching in exhaustion. The moon continues explaining that when everyone has hit the sack and Richard has eaten his nighttime snack, they drift off to sleep. Richard is shown trying to eat spaghetti while sleepy, but eventually falls asleep with his face falling directly onto the plate of spaghetti. He can be heard snoring. The moon says, nonetheless, when everything is tired and bleary, they spoon together snug but weary. Even the traffic lights fall asleep, with the red light shutting off and causing cars to collide. The red light immediately wakes up and turns back on. The moon explains they drift off to a distant place, not bound by rules of time and space, a place of wonder, sounds, and sights, a place of joy, fear, or frights. The camera fades into Gumball's bedroom directly in front of his face. He gasps and leans back on his pillow, asking Darwin if he sometimes gets that weird feeling like he's falling when going to sleep. The camera zooms out to reveal Gumball is in his bunk bed, floating in outer space, actually falling down through the sky. Gumball screams, but then realizes this is just a dream and nothing bad can happen because he'll simply wake up before he hits the ground. This assumption is immediately proven wrong. As he falls, he hits a satellite, then an airplane, then Mrs. Jotunheim, then Hector, then the Shanax Incubator building, then a suspended window cleaning ledge, and finally his own roof. Each impact is painful and real within the dream. Gumball, now beaten up, says finally as he approaches the ground, just as he's about to hit it, he wakes up in alarm, but bumps his head on the top bunk of his bed, accidentally knocking himself unconscious. The dream's promise of waking up before impact becomes meaningless when reality delivers the same result. Mr. Small is shown preparing for sleep, talking about the land of slumber being a magic world where one can fly or breathe underwater, a place where rainbows flow like rivers and animals dance on clouds, a place with no limits. He wonders where his wondrous imagination will take him this time. He falls asleep and wakes up in his dream trapped in an extremely cramped house with barely any room to move. A clock ticks loudly in the background. Mr. Small is about to scream but can only manage a very quiet scream because there's no space even for sound. His anticipation of limitless wonder becomes a claustrophobic nightmare where he cannot move or express himself. Banana Joe is sleeping on his bed and quietly barks in his sleep. In his dream, it appears he wants to bite the end of himself, but instead he splits himself completely in half. Both pieces of the banana then regrow into complete versions of himself and start chasing each other around. Banana Joe wakes up actually biting himself, then notices he is split into two halves in reality. He screams at the discovery the dream has somehow manifested in the real world, leaving him divided. Nicole's dream begins peacefully as she sits in a deck chair on a tropical beach, wearing a white sundress and holding a coconut cup. She sighs contentedly, but then yelps as the ground shakes like an earthquake. The camera cuts back to the bedroom to reveal the earthquake in her dream is caused by Richard's snoring. Nicole is still asleep, but looks annoyed. Back in her dream, she tries to resume relaxation but gets hit by a burst of wind that blows away her deck chair and almost blows Nicole away. She manages to stick to the ground with her hands until she's blown away seconds later. The camera reveals the wind is also caused by Richard snoring directly in her face. In her dream, Nicole stands a bit shocked on the ground when suddenly the ground moves into a vertical position, causing her to fall back until the ground becomes horizontal again. Just as she gets back on her feet, a large tsunami washes her out to sea. The camera cuts back to show Richard has rolled over on top of his wife and is squashing her. Nicole is flailing her arms and suffocating under him, unable to escape even in sleep. Richard's dream shows a real human hand kneading dough with Richard's face superimposed onto it. Richard sings about being a bun, a tasty, tasty bun, explaining how fun it is to be baked and kneaded. He sings about being eaten with breakfast, brunch, dinner, and lunch. The camera cuts back to the bedroom with Richard still on top of Nicole saying, bun in his sleep while crushing his wife. Darwin's dream is remarkably simple. He's shown sleeping in his fishbowl, and he dreams that his bowl is just bigger. Nothing else changes, just a larger fishbowl. Larry is sleeping on the counter at his work when he dreams about seeing Richard dancing in the shape of a bun, still singing his bun song. Richard explodes mid-song and Larry wakes up. He tells himself no dozing on the job because business does not sleep. He looks around and sees he's in an apocalyptic wasteland. He notes it's not a very convenient location for a convenience store. An older version of Larry appears, getting closer to him through frame cuts, telling him he has wasted his life. Larry asks what, and something explodes in the foreground. Larry wakes up again but sees himself completely naked and screams. Larry wakes up for the third time but discovers his mouth has been stitched together, making his scream come out muffled. He wakes up for the fourth time in his bedroom and realizes he overslept, but then corrects himself that he does not get to sleep at all. He blinks with his right eye, but it's actually Donut Sheriff snapping at his face to wake him up. The officer orders a grande cappuccino with the milk, coffee, foam, and cup all on the side, plus 3 donuts with extra cheese and 4 hot dogs without the skin on them. Larry asks what and starts to peel the skin off the hot dog, then realizes this is another dream where he gets tortured by stupid customers with insane demands. He declares this is his dream and he can do what he wants in it. Larry takes the officer's hat and puts it on himself while making chicken noises, then pats his butt, making weird noises. He slaps the officer and rubs his body against him while purring like a cat. He jumps through the officer's donut hole and comes in and out, mocking a cuckoo clock. Larry kisses him and starts to lick him, but the scene cuts to Larry screaming in a jail cell. A hobo is sleeping in the same cell. Larry says he'll probably wake up soon and counts down from 3 to 1, then says, "Now." Nothing happens. He asks where the pixie dust transition is and makes sounds expecting to wake up. He says, "Oh gosh," realizing he's actually trapped in jail and cannot wake up. Hector is shown sleeping in his cave and dreams about being the same height as everyone else in Elmore instead of being a giant. He wakes up in his dream and excitedly shakes Gary the mailman, celebrating that he's not a giant anymore and can do everything regular people can do. He dances happily down the street without destroying the neighborhood. He skips merrily and hugs Mrs. Miller without hospitalizing her. He goes to the bus stop and gasps with excitement. Realizing he can take the bus, he sits at the back of the school bus while everyone stares at him awkwardly. He celebrates, but notes the bus is very slow. When the bus arrives at school, Hector leaps out and resumes his dance, saying he can sit in a classroom like everyone else, but refuses to waste his dream on studying. He's shown at the mall holding shopping bags and wearing clothes, celebrating that he can buy clothes instead of pretending he's not naked and hoping nobody looks up. He's sitting in a bathroom stall, happily kicking his legs, celebrating that he can use a toilet instead of a volcano. He sits next to Sarah on a park bench and softly says hi before kissing her on the cheek. Sarah giggles, flattered. Hector celebrates that he can have a girlfriend. His dream deteriorates to reveal that in reality, he's dancing all over Elmore in his sleep while citizens below panic and helicopters circle him. He laughs in his sleep and falls flat on his back, destroying property. Carrie is shown sleeping in her bed, sweating, and moving around uncomfortably. Her dream shows her trapped in a magical land full of bright and colorful singing objects. She screams no, her worst nightmare being the opposite of her dark aesthetic. Terry's dream is the classic naked at school nightmare. She's walking down the hallway and realizes she's completely naked. Her body is pixelated as she covers herself. The bell rings and everyone gets out of class. She tries to hide behind various lockers, but the owners keep arriving immediately and thanking her for holding their lockers open. She runs away and slides under a door, but realizes she's entered a teacher's meeting where Principal Brown is discussing appropriate school attire. She quickly turns sideways so the teachers cannot see her. She escapes and keeps running until she sees Gumball and Darwin approaching. She crumples herself up and throws herself into a trash can. After they pass, she gets out and finds a pencil in a locker. Celebrating and trying to draw clothes on herself. The scene changes back to her bedroom where Terry is actually drawing on herself while sleeping, unable to create proper clothing even with a real pencil. Daisy the donkey's dream is particularly disturbing because it reverses the relationship between Anais and her stuffed toy. The camera shows Anais in her bed hugging Daisy, then enters the dream where Daisy is alive and Anais is the doll. Creepy music plays in the background as Daisy feeds Anais with a spoon, getting food all over her. Daisy says Anais is dirty and it's bath time. She puts Anais underwater in the bathtub and says she's still dirty, dunking her again. Daisy says they should play a little more and dries Anais with a blow dryer. Anais gets dragged behind a car on the road, dumped in mud, hit by a tennis ball and ripped. Daisy hugs her and whispers that Aeneas is her best friend, asking if Aeneas likes her too. She pulls the string on the Aeneas doll, which says, "Please end this," Daisy whispers, never, and hugs her tighter. The scene cuts back to the bedroom, and Daisy says out loud that this was her dream, implying the toy has consciousness. Juke's dream shows him on the school playground, sitting on a bench when Carmen walks by. He greets her and gasps, realizing, he can talk and communicate again. He calls to Gumball and Darwin, asking them to have a conversation right now. Gumball makes trumpet noises, and Darwin makes piano noises instead of speaking. Juke says no, protesting that it's not fair. Tobias walks in, banging on his head, making bongo sounds. The camera zooms out to reveal Carrie, Masami, Carmen, Leslie, and Molly are all communicating through instrumental sounds. Juke screams no, realizing even in his dream where he gains speech, everyone else loses theirs. The Robinsons are shown sleeping, and in their shared dream, Mrs. Robinson is relaxing on a chair while Mr. Robinson blows away leaves. He looks at his wife and blows the leaf blower at her, chuckling. He blows at her again and starts laughing harder. He blows once more until Mrs. Robinson throws a garden gnome at the blower, which explodes and covers him in soot. She laughs, provoking him to set off sprinklers at her. They start throwing objects at each other in escalating chaos. After throwing everything available, they look around and realize there's nothing left to throw. They both turn into Super Saiyans and use so much power, they explode out of their bed in reality. Susie is shown sleeping in her bed. In her dream, a person off screen says, "Cut," and that's a wrap, thanking everybody. Susie asks what's going on. Somebody removes the bed behind her and then removes her accessories, revealing a human woman named Aurélie Charbonnier underneath the Susie costume. Susie screams and wails in panic that she's turned into a monster. She runs around the room before leaving it. The person off screen asks if somebody will check on her to see if she's okay. The implication is that Susie's true form is what she considers monstrous. Alan's dream is the most disturbing sequence in the episode. A still image with a skull on a fiery background pops up for a split second. It appears again briefly, then fully shows itself. This is followed by a rapid succession of disturbing images, including strawberries and vegetables rotting in time-lapse, two unsettling clown statues staring at the camera, a clown making balloon animals out of what appear to be Alan's parents, a hand with an eye in its center, and someone scraping their nails on a chalkboard. All of this plays with Giuseppe Verdi's Dies Irae from Messa da Requiem, funeral music about the Day of Judgment. The camera cuts back to Alan, who is peacefully humming while asleep, completely content with these horrifying visions. The moon concludes that now we know what joy and fun is in the dreams of everyone. The camera cuts back to Larry, still trapped in jail, counting down from 3 and snapping his fingers, unable to wake up. The moon corrects itself, saying almost everyone. The moon continues rhyming about going to bed when Marvin pops up from a window with lights on, telling the moon to be quiet because he's really tired. Harold pops from his window saying he's trying to get some rest. Patrick appears at his window upset and holding a sandal, telling the moon to keep it down. He throws the sandal at the moon, which gets hit mid-sentence. The moon finishes by saying to enjoy this moment while it lasts and embrace whatever comes to pass because the day is always kind of rough since the night is never long enough. The scene immediately cuts to the next morning with everyone's alarm clocks going off and several citizens groaning, having to face reality again after their night of psychological torment. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have The Mirror from Season 3, Episode 23, the Mirror episode. From the amazing world of Gumball turns a chain email into a genuine curse that systematically destroys everything Gumball holds dear before dragging his family into glass surfaces, forcing him to use forbidden magic that costs him his body parts piece by piece. The episode begins on a beautiful morning with Gumball and Darwin having breakfast at the table. Gumball rambles on affectionately about Penny, while Darwin reluctantly listens as he eats. Gumball talks about finding balance between space as a couple and space as an individual. Darwin tries to interrupt, but Gumball keeps talking over him. Darwin explains all he asked was for Gumball to pass the sugar. Gumball continues rambling about not having stupid names like Sugar or Sweetie Pie or Honey Buns, and how they're not one of those couples who dress the same. Darwin begs to talk about something else. Gumball insists they talk about loads of stuff, but Darwin warns that if Gumball does not stop talking about Penny right this second, he's going to start eating his own face. Gumball ignores this and continues talking about keeping his own place, but maybe moving in with Penny if things get serious. Darwin makes good on his threat and actually starts eating his own face while Gumball keeps talking. From the bedroom, a notification from Elmore Plus can be heard. Gumball rushes to the computer by leaping through the ceiling and emerging through the floor of his room, leaving a hole behind. He shouts that there's a new email and maybe it's from Penny. He clicks the email and reads it out loud, getting progressively more scared as he continues. The email says he is now cursed, and if he does not forward this email to 10 people, the Snatcher will first take his money, then his friends, then his family. Darwin emerges beside Gumball looking mortified. Gumball continues reading that tonight the Snatcher will show his face in the mirror, and with his long, cold claws, he will rip Gumball's spirit away from him. Gumball gasps and says, "Delete." Darwin asks what they're going to do if the Snatcher comes and takes all of Gumball's money, friends, and family because he did not forward the email. Gumball responds that the only way to describe how stupid this sounds is by using words he's too young to know the meaning of. He deletes the email. On the school bus, Gumball asks Darwin what else he believes in and questions if he believes in Bigfoot. Darwin says there's a photo of him, so of course he exists. Gumball suppresses his laughter and asks what Bigfoot eats. Darwin thinks about it and answers sausages. In the schoolyard, Gumball is on the ground laughing and asks about horoscopes. Darwin asks what else Gumball thinks the stars are for. Gumball sarcastically says he does not know and asks what Darwin thinks they're for. Darwin explains they're to tell us about the future and to make wishes. In the cafeteria, both boys are in line and Gumball is laughing again. He asks Darwin if he also believes in telepathy. Darwin asks how Gumball cannot believe in it when he just read Darwin's mind. Gumball laughs out loud and says Darwin believes in things he does not believe in. He starts to say please stop because he's afraid he's going to pop something, but then his torso actually deflates. He pulls himself back to normal and walks to Rocky at the counter. Rocky says that's $5. Gumball reaches into his pocket but cannot find his money. Darwin asks him not to say he lost all his money. Gumball insists it's in there and keeps searching his deep pockets. He finally pulls something out, but it's his underwear instead of money. He offers it to Rocky, who says, "Sorry, but it's cash or card only." The scene cuts to Gumball slicing his underwear in half on a plate. He says, "Bon appetit," and gives half of the underwear to Darwin. Darwin pushes it away and tells Gumball this is the curse, because first, the Snatcher will take all his money. Gumball eats his underwear and says it's just a coincidence. He takes a string out of his mouth and eats it. Carrie passes by and Gumball asks her to please tell Darwin that the Snatcher does not exist. Carrie looks shocked and immediately teleports away. Darwin says even Carrie is freaked out by the curse. Gumball thinks it was more the fact they were eating underwear in public. In Miss Simeon's class, Gumball and Penny blow each other kisses from across the room. Gumball leans in to Darwin and asks him to pass a message to Penny, saying she's so cool that she gives penguins brain freeze. Darwin reluctantly passes the message to Leslie sitting in front of him. Leslie passes it to Banana Joe. Joe passes it to Carmen, and Carmen finally delivers the message to Penny. Carmen tells Penny that Gumball says she's fat. Everyone gasps dramatically. Penny turns to Gumball, who gives a thumbs up with a dopey face. Penny shapeshifts into her Gorgon form and hisses at Gumball. Things are thrown at him, including Banana Joe, who is thrown like a boomerang, and causes Gumball to faceplant into his desk. Gumball and Darwin walk home dejectedly. Gumball sighs and tells Darwin to just say it. Darwin asks what he means. Gumball explains he's lost all his money, all his friends, and his girlfriend, so it looks like Darwin was right to take the curse seriously. He tells Darwin to just say, "I told you so." Darwin says he does not know what Gumball takes him for, but he gets no pleasure out of this. They walk up to the front door of their house. Darwin says they should just hope their family is still there. They open the door to find the house completely empty. Gumball calls out for his mom and dad, then closes the door. Darwin says, "Told you so." Gumball slaps Darwin and screams for him to stop being hysterical. Darwin slaps him back. They slap each other repeatedly before Gumball calls for a truce. He says this is not very constructive. Darwin declares they're doing this his way now and getting help, specifically magical help. In Hector's cave, Mrs. Jotunheim is mixing ingredients into a cauldron. She says "Eye of a tiger" and produces a small bottle of green liquid, explaining she needs just the tiniest drop. Darwin greets her and she screams in surprise, dropping the entire bottle into the cauldron. There is an explosion. Mrs. Jotunheim says yes, she can try to make a potion to defend them against the Snatcher's curse, but she will need assistance. Gumball whistles and is shown dressed up in a wizard's robe, asking "What's up, wizards?" Mrs. Jotunheim groans and tells him to go get the ingredients. Gumball takes a list from her and spins around in a failed attempt to look cool, saying "Abracadabra." He twirls again and accidentally knocks over the cauldron, spilling its contents. There is another explosion. Mrs. Jotunheim coughs and tells him to do it without twirling this time. Gumball walks away sheepishly. Darwin asks Mrs. Jotunheim who this Snatcher guy is. She explains there once was a young man, a mortal man who fell in love with a beautiful ghost after seeing her in a mirror. As she continues, images from the story are formed in her cauldron. She says all he wanted was to kiss her just once. In a forbidden book, he found an incantation that allowed the living to touch a ghost. The price for this was a cursed life. Now his spirit floats in limbo, trapped behind mirrors, becoming more lonely and more angry every day, looking for someone to take his place. A skeleton arm appears, and Darwin and Mrs. Jotunheim scream. Gumball is revealed to be holding the arm, asking what's wrong since that's what she asked for. Mrs. Jotunheim takes the arm and drops it into the cauldron, telling them to stay back. A large plume of green smoke with an evil face on it emerges from the cauldron. As the smoke grows, Gumball and Darwin cower and brace themselves. Mrs. Jotunheim returns with a fire extinguisher and puts out the smoke. She asks what they're looking at, and if they could not see, it was on fire. She tells them when the Snatcher comes for them through the mirror, they should throw this at him. She reaches into the cauldron and takes out a #1 mom mug with green liquid in it. The mug is smoking, and its rim is covered with green grime. She apologizes for not doing the dishes. Gumball and Darwin enter their home, with Gumball holding the mug. As they slowly enter, the door slams shut. Gumball gasps and says, "The Snatcher is here because he can feel it." The doorknob suddenly starts jiggling, and the boys watch in suspense. Richard, Nicole, and Anais burst in gleefully shouting about fried chicken day. Panicked, Gumball throws the liquid in the mug at Richard. Richard starts screaming in pain but suddenly calms down and tastes the liquid, saying it's actually not that bad and asking what's in it. Gumball says Richard does not want to know. Darwin asks what they're going to do now when the Snatcher comes. Gumball says it does not matter because the family is here, and all this Snatcher stuff was baloney. He says he thought they were gone forever. Anais says it sure felt like it. Nicole explains Richard was banned from the chicken shack, so they had to go out of town to get some. Richard says they should not say all you can eat if they do not mean it. Nicole points out that Richard ate a chair. They walk to the table and Gumball stares smugly at Darwin. Darwin sighs and tells Gumball to go on and say it. Gumball asks, "Say what?" Darwin says, "I told you so." Gumball announces he's going to do a dance first and dances around Darwin. Darwin says he's glad Gumball is taking this seriously. Nicole asks someone to pass her a wing. Richard says sure. Darwin asks them to leave some for him and Gumball. Suddenly there is a green eerie light. The Snatcher's hands emerge from the glass surfaces around them and snatch Nicole, Anais, and Richard. He drags them into the glass, with Richard going into a window and Nicole and Anais going into separate pictures before being taken completely. Richard struggles to eat some more chicken before being dragged away. Gumball and Darwin watch in shock. Then the Snatcher himself reappears in a picture and growls at them before disappearing again. After a moment of silence, Carrie teleports to them with the forbidden book. Gumball and Darwin scream in surprise. Carrie tells them to calm down. She explains that when she saw them this morning, she recognized the Snatcher's curse, so she went to the underworld to retrieve the forbidden book, which has the solution. The only problem is they have to wait until the sun rises. Gumball asks how she knows so much about all this. Carrie starts to explain there once was a young man, a mortal man, who fell in love with a beautiful ghost, but Gumball cuts her off, saying they already know. Carrie asks if they knew the young man and the ghost had a child. Darwin says, "You, a zombie." Carrie reveals that child was her. Gumball and Darwin suck in their breath. Gumball asks what they do. Carrie says they survive. Gumball walks to the door, saying he has a much better idea about bailing. The house starts shaking, and the Snatcher's face emerges from the door. Gumball turns to his side to see the Snatcher, who immediately disappears. Gumball turns away, and the Snatcher emerges again. After turning to his side, the Snatcher disappears. Gumball turns away, then quickly turns to his side, saying, "Aha!" The Snatcher's face emerges and scares him. As he catches his breath, the Snatcher comes out of a nearby picture and tries to snatch him. Gumball asks if that poltergeist creep is Carrie's dad. Carrie says yes, and she would appreciate if he stopped calling him names and treated him with the respect he deserves. Darwin walks to the Snatcher and holds out a fin as if to shake hands, saying, "Glad to finally meet you, sir." Gumball pulls him away just as the Snatcher pounces. Darwin says the Snatcher seems to have a few issues. Carrie explains it's not his fault because he's been turned evil by loneliness. Gumball is knocked down on a table as the Snatcher emerges from the TV. Darwin quickly takes the remote and switches the TV on, making the Snatcher disappear, but the TV shows the shopping channel with someone saying $10 today only. Gumball says he thinks he would prefer a life of damnation in limbo rather than having to watch that. Darwin says, "Fair enough," and switches off the TV. The Snatcher reemerges and they all take cover behind the sofa. Gumball asks what they're going to do about the Snatcher. Carrie explains the book says they summon him by calling his name 5 times. When he appears in the mirror and the first light of dawn strikes it, they smash him with the book and break the spell. Darwin asks why they have to call his name 5 times. Carrie says that's how you summon all ghosts. Darwin tests this by saying Carrie's name 5 times, and she reappears at his side. Gumball and Darwin laugh. Gumball also says Carrie's name 5 times, and she appears at his side. They laugh again. Carrie possesses Gumball and makes him slap himself before coming out. She asks if they're done here. Gumball nods. Darwin asks why they do not just use the book to defend themselves. Gumball says great idea. The Snatcher hops from one mirror-like surface to another and appears near them. Gumball takes the book and strikes the Snatcher with it. They run into the kitchen. Darwin clarifies he meant use the spells inside. Carrie warns them not to because the price to pay is too high. Gumball says they do not have a choice. He finds a time-traveling spell and says they should just go through the night. He reads Tempus Fugit and the night fast forwards to dawn. Gumball starts to say, "Haha, in your face," but grows old mid-sentence. He walks to the microwave and looks at himself in its reflection, asking in an old man voice what happened. Carrie pulls him away just as the Snatcher emerges from the microwave. She explains the price for that spell was his youth. Darwin says not to worry because there must be something to fix that. He finds a spell and reads Butio Eterno. Gumball's wrinkles fade away somewhat, but his face is pulled up, giving him a disfigured smile. Gumball asks how he looks. Carrie says it's eternally surprised. Gumball tells them to look out as the Snatcher's arm emerges from the microwave again. Before it can grab Darwin, Darwin shatters to pieces. Gumball asks what happened. Carrie explains the price for eternal beauty was Darwin's life. Gumball says what and tells Darwin to hold on. He reads Resurrectum Mortis and Darwin reassembles, now with his body parts stitched together like Frankenstein's monster. The Snatcher is touched by the light of dawn and flees back into the darkness. Carrie tells them to come on because the sun's about to come up. Gumball says to wait because there's a big mirror in the attic. His body shrivels away, leaving only his head. Carrie says, oh no, explaining the price for resurrecting Darwin was Gumball's own body. Gumball says he figured that one out. Darwin carries Gumball's head, and they go up to the attic and approach the mirror. Carrie tells them to quickly call the Snatcher's name 5 times. Gumball asks what his name is again. Carrie says Vladislovus Lokowiczki. Gumball tries to repeat it but gets literally tongue-tied. He says he thinks he sprained his tongue. Carrie tells him to just say Vlad. Gumball says Vlad 5 times, and the Snatcher emerges from the mirror, the 3, back into the window in the attic, opening it and exposing the Snatcher to sunlight. He writhes in the light and retreats into the mirror. Carrie throws the book at him and breaks the glass. This frees Aeneas, Nicole, and Richard, who all emerge from mirrors and mirror-like surfaces. A portal opens up in the broken attic mirror and someone emerges from it. Carrie asks if it's her dad and if he recognizes her. Vladis asks how he could not recognize his beautiful girl and thanks her for setting him free. They run to hug each other, but the moment is ruined when Carrie phases through her dad and he falls out of the window, killing him. Carrie asks if he's okay. Gumball inhales sharply and says no repeatedly. Just as they're about to walk away, Carrie's father phases through the floor, revealing he has turned into a ghost himself. He and his daughter share a hug. The rest of the Wattersons arrive at the scene and say, "Aw." Gumball says this is like him and Penny because but everyone groans in response, and the episode ends. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Next up, we have The Ghost from Season 1, Episode 12. The Ghost. The Ghost episode from The Amazing World of Gumball explores body possession as Carrie takes complete control of Gumball's physical form, transforming him into a vehicle for her insatiable hunger while he remains trapped and conscious inside, forced to watch himself commit increasingly disturbing acts. The episode begins in the school cafeteria where Gumball and Darwin are sitting at a table with Carrie next to them. Both boys are eating their food and enjoying the flavor. Gumball gives Darwin a try of his food, and Darwin does the same. Carrie sighs and says, "This is so insensitive because ghosts cannot eat." She demonstrates by eating a lump of food that falls through her ghostly body back onto the plate. She sighs again and explains that watching them eat at lunchtime makes her afterlife a misery. Gumball responds that Carrie likes being miserable. Carrie says that's not the point because she's hungry. Gumball asks why she comes to the cafeteria every day. Carrie explains it's because it brings out the only feeling she has left, which is pain. She sighs and flips her hair. Gumball looks sad for a moment, then cheerfully asks if he can have her lunch. Carrie sighs and says whatever, allowing Gumball to start eating it. She wishes she still had a body. Darwin suggests she use Gumball's body. Gumball immediately spits out his food and asks what. Carrie asks if Gumball would really do that for her. Darwin says sure because Gumball is always there for a friend in need. Gumball asks if he is. Carrie says great and thanks him. Gumball tries to say no and wait, but Carrie possesses his body before he can stop her. His head shakes fast a few times before Carrie takes full control. Gumball's body turns greenish, and he looks ghastly. Carrie makes a growling sound and says in a raspy voice that she can breathe. She grabs food and says she can feel and she can eat. She starts eating and making eating sounds. She grabs Darwin's face and says she needs more. Carrie throws Darwin on the floor and walks through the cafeteria, scaring all the students. She leaves the cafeteria and a girlish scream is heard from behind the door. Darwin says another happy ending, completely oblivious to what just happened. Heavy metal music plays in the background as a point-of-view shot. Shows Gumball possessed by Carrie running to Joyful Burger. He throws money to Larry and eats all the food, grabbing a burger and taking the pickle out before eating it. Possessed Gumball then runs to the dumpster and takes a turkey leg from the hobo. He eats all the hot dogs from Pants Bully's hot dog cart. The donut sheriff arrives and Carrie bites him. The officer yells "ow" and speaks into his walkie-talkie that they have a man down. Possessed Gumball runs away and the scene cuts to black. Gumball wakes up on the sidewalk in front of his house, surrounded by junk food. Darwin and Richard come up to him. Gumball groans. Richard asks where he's been and what happened. Darwin explains it was Carrie who made Gumball go on a crazy junk food spree. Richard says Gumball got to eat all that food and calls it awesome. Gumball says no, it was not. He gets up from the junk food pile, revealing he has gotten fat. His belly and chest jiggle. Richard laughs and says muffin top. He keeps laughing, then stops, realizing his own body is the same as his belly and chest jiggle when he laughs. Richard says it's only funny when it's someone else's body and runs off crying. During lunch in the school cafeteria, Gumball is back to his normal size and sitting at a table with Darwin. Darwin is eating a sandwich, but Gumball is not eating anything. Darwin notices and points at his food. Gumball crosses his arms and says he cannot eat a thing after last night because Carrie has a real problem. She made him eat until he passed out and he cannot let that happen again. Carrie enters and asks if Gumball feels like helping her eat this sandwich. Gumball says sorry, but he's not sure he wants to do that again. Carrie moves the sandwich away from her face and reminds Gumball that the cafeteria does not do refunds. Gumball sighs and says, okay, but just for this one single time. The food rampage is abruptly shown again, with Carrie eating all the food while possessing Gumball. Gumball appears on the sidewalk again, surrounded with food and chubby. He groans. Darwin greets him. Gumball asks if it has happened again. Darwin confirms yes, but says he thinks he has an idea and shows a cunning face. They are in the kitchen and Gumball is his normal size again. Darwin explains that if Carrie likes going inside Gumball's body so much, they should make his inside somewhere she will not like. Gumball asks how. Darwin shows his filthy fishbowl water and says by drinking this. Gumball asks if it's his rancid fishbowl water. Darwin confirms and adds the sweaty juice of Tobias's headband while squeezing Tobias's sweat from the headband into the bowl. He adds a generous sprinkle of Miss Simeon's dandruff, sprinkling it on the water. He mentions 15-day-old underpants. Gumball asks where he's going to get that, and Darwin pulls Gumball's 15-day unwashed underwear out from his pants. Gumball reacts in shock. Darwin adds fizzy fish gas by burping into his bowl with a straw. Gumball says, it's disgusting. Darwin says, it's ghost-proof. Gumball takes one sip and finds it revolting, asking if he's finished. Darwin says, Gumball has to drink it all. Gumball drinks it slowly, and Darwin forces the bowl up, saying they're nearly there. Gumball reacts disgustedly. Darwin tells him to close his eyes and open wide because here comes dessert. Gumball opens his mouth, expecting another disgusting thing. He opens his eyes and sees Darwin is actually just eating ice cream himself. Darwin says it's so good. Gumball sighs. At school, Gumball walks through the hallway greeting fellow students. He says hi to Leslie, and his breath disgusts Leslie and makes him wither. He asks Bober how he's doing, and Bobert malfunctions while Alan deflates completely. He greets Susie and asks how her hot chocolate is, causing Susie to vomit her hot chocolate. Carrie approaches and smells Gumball's breath. She says, "Oh, that smell." Gumball says he knows it's horrible. Carrie shakes her head up and down, saying yes, then speaks seductively saying she loves it, and it smells like the undead. She says it makes her hungry and grins. Gumball sighs. The same music from the rampage starts playing in the background, this time without drumming sounds. Richard is sitting on the sofa eating popcorn and watching television. Gumball, looking much fatter than the last two times, struggles to approach and get up onto the sofa. Richard asks what's up. Gumball asks between grunts what Richard does when someone asks him for something and he does not want to do it. Richard explains that people ask him to do things all the time, but asks if Gumball ever sees him doing anything. Gumball says, "Not really." Richard says exactly and announces it's time he taught Gumball about weaseling. Gumball asks what weaseling is. Richard says, to allow him to demonstrate and asks Gumball to ask him for something. Gumball asks if Richard can tell him how to stop Carrie from using his body. Richard says he would love to, but, he has to go take the meatloaf he's been baking out of the oven. Gumball walks to the window and sees Richard run to the backyard and jump over the fence. Richard shouts, "End of lesson." The scene switches back to school where Gumball tries weaseling Carrie. He says he would love to, but unfortunately he has to go check on his meatloaf. Carrie asks about his meatloaf. Gumball says yes, he left it in his locker. Carrie asks if he means this locker and slams Gumball's empty locker with her elbow. Gumball says no, his gym locker. Carrie says he does not have a gym locker. Gumball says yes, he meant Jim's locker. Carrie asks who Jim is. Gumball says he's his doctor. Carrie asks if he means his meatloaf is in his doctor's locker here at school. Gumball says yes because they're having Thanksgiving here, then gives up and says whatever, Carrie can have his body. At home, Nicole is in the kitchen doing dishes. Gumball, now even fatter, appears in front of the kitchen window casting a shadow over Nicole. Gumball says he thinks he might be putting on weight. Nicole says it's just baby fat and tells him to come inside for a chat. Gumball enters the kitchen, rolling like a ball. Nicole says perhaps he has gained a little. Gumball says he knows it's Carrie and he does not know how to get her to stop. Nicole points to the living room and says they need to talk. Gumball leaves the kitchen rolling. Gumball and Nicole are sitting on the sofa. Nicole asks if he has actually tried saying no to Carrie. Gumball asks no and slaps himself, wondering why he did not think of that. Nicole says when he says no, he has to mean it. She offers to show him and asks Richard to come here. Richard says, yeah, just woken up from his nap in the backyard. Nicole asks if he could get her the bowl of sausages from the kitchen. Richard gets excited and runs to the kitchen to get the bowl of sausages. He brings it and asks if he can have one. Nicole says no and that he'll have to wait. She places the sausage on Richard's nose and he looks disappointed. Nicole explains to Gumball that once he's made his position clear, he has to stand firm. Richard asks if he can have it now. Nicole says no. Richard desperately asks, what about now? Nicole says no and asks if that would be a bad Richard. She tells Gumball to just say no and mean it. Gumball says awesome and asks if he can have a sausage. Nicole gets up off the couch and says no, they're putting him on a diet. She eats a sausage and leaves. After the bell rings at school, Gumball is once again his normal size and walking along a corridor with Darwin. Darwin nervously warns Gumball to be careful because Carrie may be hanging around. Gumball says not to worry because this time he knows what he's doing. Carrie appears and asks if she can borrow Gumball's body. Gumball says no. Carrie asks, shocked, what he means by no. Gumball says he means she cannot use his body anymore. Darwin nods in agreement. Carrie says Gumball does not know what it's like and begs him. Gumball says no, Carrie cannot borrow his body. Carrie says then in a demonic voice, she will take it. She enters Gumball through his mouth, possessing him. Darwin screams and runs away. Possessed Gumball leaves looking for food. Gumball yells for Carrie to get out of his body. Carrie says in a raspy voice that it's no use resisting. Possessed Gumball enters the cafeteria and everyone looks at him. Gumball yells for everyone to run because their lunch is in danger. Carrie says food. She makes Gumball climb the wall and crawl on the ceiling. Anton is about to eat a sandwich when he's disturbed by Gumball's falling spit onto his food. Anton complains and Gumball's head rotates 180 degrees. He grabs the sandwich with his tongue and eats it. Anton screams in terror. Possessed Gumball starts eating every single piece of food he finds. Gumball tells Carrie to stop because she's freaking their friends out. Carrie slaps him against the table and says she does not care and must eat. Gumball says, okay, she asked for this. They fight for control of the body. Carrie says Gumball should not have done that. Gumball says she's crazy. Carrie makes Gumball slap himself. He grabs his hand, stopping this, and Carrie makes him kick himself. Gumball says to cut that out or he'll tell someone. Carrie makes him grab himself by his nose and slap himself against another table. Carrie tries to eat a sausage with a fork, but Gumball stops her with another fork. They fight with the forks. Gumball is about to win the fork battle, but finally fails, and Carrie throws Gumball's fork away. Carrie tells him to stand down. Gumball says never and throws salt to his right hand, which is Carrie's side. Carrie screams that her eyes hurt. She jumps up and eats all the food in the food trays. Carrie tells Rocky to give her more food. Rocky says she ate it all and she can lick the ladle if she likes. Possessed Gumball jumps onto Rocky. Rocky screams for Gumball to get off him. Gumball yells to stop it. Other students look at Gumball behind the cafeteria doors as he fights against himself. Gumball yells to take that off screen. Carrie asks what they're looking at. The students scream and leave. Carrie bends Gumball's arm and he screams in pain, saying that does not bend that way. He yells for Darwin to help him because he cannot do this on his own. Darwin will have to beat this ghost down for him. Darwin says he's a pacifist. Gumball begs him to do it for him because he's his friend. Carrie forces Gumball to jump out of the window. Possessed Gumball eats all the garbage and drinks from the puddle. Gumball looks at a puddle and sees Carrie's reflection. He tells Carrie to stop doing this because she has a serious problem. Carrie says in her normal voice that no, she does not. Gumball says she's drinking dumpster water and eating garbage. He shows her a bitten flip-flop. Carrie asks what that is. Gumball says it's a flip-flop. Carrie says EW and admits maybe she has gone a bit too far. Gumball agrees. Carrie comes out of Gumball's body and flips her hair. Gumball says he was thinking, but Darwin arrives and smacks Gumball's head with a garbage can cover. Darwin repeatedly says, "Spirit begone," then greets Carrie and continues saying "Spirit begone" before realizing what he's doing. Gumball says, "Ow!" Carrie apologizes for putting Gumball through all that and says she guesses she'll just go back to her painful, foodless eternity. She floats sadly away. Gumball tells her to wait and straightens his back as Carrie turns to face him. He says he thinks he knows someone who can help. At home, Richard is sitting on the sofa with the sausage still on his nose, drooling. Gumball, Darwin, and Carrie enter the house. Gumball introduces Carrie to his dad. Richard says hello in a muffled voice. Gumball asks if it's okay if she borrows Richard's body for a crazy junk food spree. Richard says he guesses so in a muffled voice. Gumball says that sounded like a yes to him. Carrie smiles and enters Richard's body, possessing him. She eats the sausage from possessed Richard's nose and says in a raspy voice she wants more food. She runs to the kitchen. Nicole can be heard off-screen saying, "No, Richard," and telling him to stop it because that's a bad Richard. Darwin says another happy ending, and the episode ends with the implication that Carrie will continue her destructive eating rampages using Richard's body instead. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have Halloween from Season 2, Episode 9, Halloween. The Halloween episode from The Amazing World of Gumball transforms a simple party invitation into a race against death itself, where drinking too much of a ghostly potion separates the children from their physical bodies and gives them until the stroke of midnight to reunite or remain as ghosts forever. The episode begins at the Watterson house, where Banana Joe and Idaho are dressed up for Halloween and ring the doorbell. Richard says ding dong, and when the boys say trick or treat, they discover the doorbell is actually part of Richard's disguise as he is camouflaged to blend in with the front of the house. Richard opens his eyes, startling the two kids. Banana Joe and Idaho run away in fear as Richard bursts into laughter, leaving their treats behind. Richard looks at what they left and says sadly that it's all raisins and granola bars. Inside the Watterson house, Gumball and Aeneas are seated on the couch. Gumball has a skeleton costume on while Aeneas is dressed as a princess. Gumball tells Aeneas it's supposed to be Halloween, not sugar-coated marshmallow syrup day. Aeneas responds that everyone knows cute beats scary when it comes to scoring candy, demonstrating with a cute voice saying trick or treat. Gumball says at least Darwin put in some effort. Darwin appears pale and shaking, explaining this is not a costume because he's terrified of Halloween. Gumball, Darwin, and Aeneas leave the house. Nicole worries and tells them to be careful and be back at 7, asking Gumball if he's in charge. Gumball says, yeah. Nicole assures herself they will be fine. Gumball, Darwin, and Aeneas are walking through a cemetery. Darwin says taking a shortcut through a graveyard on Halloween is like wearing a kilt in a hurricane. calling it a bad idea. Gumball says to relax because they're here. Darwin and Anais' jaws drop. Anais explains there are a few places where she would not recommend asking for free candy, including rat poison factories, abandoned hospitals, and dimly lit cellars, but top of the list is creepy graveyard houses. A view of the graveyard house is shown with lightning strikes and a wolf howling. Gumball smugly says they're not here for trick or treating. Darwin asks, terrified, why they are here. Carrie appears in the foreground with a flash and her eyes closed. She explains that on Halloween night, the dark veil that separates the world of the living and the underworld is lifted, and all the spirits come to this desolate house for one reason. Gumball interrupts, telling Carrie they're over here. Carrie sighs and reappears in front of them. She starts again, explaining the spirits come to this desolate house for one reason only. Gumball loudly announces it's to party. Darwin suggests they party right here, just the four of them. He starts dancing, saying, "Woo-hoo party," repeatedly, then announces the party is over and they should go home. He turns to leave. Gumball stops him, saying they have come too far to turn back because they're on the doorstep of the swaggiest party of all time. He asks Darwin if he's with him. Darwin takes a deep breath and says no. Gumball says Darwin has to come because their mom put Gumball in charge. Darwin angrily yells, "Darn." Anais says this party is going to be awesome. Carrie says sorry, but this party is not for babies disguised as cheesecakes. Gumball agrees she's right and says Anais would be cramping their style. He picks up Anais and snags the back of her dress on a tree branch, saying she's just going to have to hang out there. Anais sighs and says, "At least it cannot get any worse." A bolt of lightning is followed by rain and thunder. Anais crosses her arms in frustration. Gumball, Darwin, and Carrie enter the large, gloomy house. Carrie whispers that if anyone asks, they should not tell them they're alive. Darwin whispers, asking who she means. Carrie whispers, they're going to have to make sure they never let anyone know, but her voice becomes inaudible. Gumball whispers sorry because she was a little too quiet on the second part. Carrie whispers, "Oh," and tries again, but her voice fades again. Gumball whispers angrily, asking if she's doing this on purpose because it's kind of annoying. Carrie whispers, she said they're going to have to, but Darwin shouts, asking her to just tell them already, and why are they whispering in an empty house? Carrie tells them to just drink some of this potion and they will see. A vial of green liquid appears hovering above Carrie's hand. She explains it will make them part ghost, but no more than a drop. Gumball accepts the vial. Darwin asks what Gumball is doing because he's too young to be drinking mysterious potions. Gumball tells Darwin not to be a square and asks what's the worst that can happen. He uncorks the vial, releasing a ghostly face which flies off screen. Gumball asks if Carrie is sure they're going to be okay. Carrie says as long as they only have one drop. Darwin says that's the thing because anything you can only have one drop of cannot be good. They do not sell milk by the drop, but by the gallon. Water is good for you, which is why it comes out of the faucet. Gumball flings a drop of the potion into Darwin's mouth, causing his pupils to dilate unnaturally. Darwin makes a sound. Gumball says skeptically he thinks he might give this potion a miss. Darwin says he's not going through this alone. Darwin forces Gumball's mouth open and pours in a drop of the potion. Gumball gasps, with his pupils dilating as well. A multitude of ghosts suddenly appear. Gumball and Darwin say, "Awesome." The ghosts are shown partying with music playing. One ghost is headbanging to music and accidentally flings its brain into a punch bowl on the table. The drink splashes a comatose apple-shaped ghost. A ghost with a hoodie comments on the apple having too much fun. A worm inside the apple says, "No, he's always like that." A muddy ghost bumps into a female ghost holding a cup, causing her to spill the drink on her shirt. She complains about getting ectoplasm all over her top. It is shown the female ghost has no body below her torso. The muddy ghost says it would have been hard to get it on her bottom. The male ghost laughs until the female's disembodied legs kick him from behind. Gumball and Darwin glare at Carrie. Carrie asks, "What?" Gumball asks how come they can see her every day, but they have to take a potion to see the other ghosts. Carrie says duh because she was born a ghost. She tells them to come meet some people and floats away. Darwin asks how that works. Gumball mimics Carrie saying duh, then admits he does not actually know. They move to join the party and the doors close behind them. Outside, Aeneas is struggling to get off the branch, saying she's so going to get into that party. Aeneas' dress rips and she falls into a well beneath her. She screams for an extended period before finally landing in water. She says, "Dagnabit." Several ghosts greet Carrie as she floats by. Gumball points at the punch bowl and asks what that stuff is. Carrie says, duh, it's ectoplasm, and it's what ghosts are made of. Gumball says in a strange voice, he wants some. Carrie says he cannot have it. Gumball loudly demands some ectoplasm. Carrie shushes him and says he cannot drink it. A nearby ghost tells him to chill out because there's plenty to go around. The ghost leans over to hand a cup to Gumball. Carrie says no, do not do it. The cup goes through Gumball's hand and vanishes into the floor. The music suddenly stops as the ghosts turn to stare at them. A ghost says, "Mortals." Gumball nervously says not to worry because he has the solution right here. He takes the potion from Darwin. Darwin asks what he's doing because Carrie said no more than a drop. Gumball asks what the problem is and if Darwin is too square. Gumball and Darwin take turns drinking from the vial. Carrie asks what they're doing. Gumball tells her to give him that. Darwin says, give it to him. Carrie wrestles the potion away and asks if they're insane. Gumball and Darwin begin laughing, but stop when they turn into ghosts. Their bodies collapse on the ground. Carrie says, look what they have done because they have completely turned into ghosts. Darwin says, which means he can finally do this. Darwin kisses Carrie, who blushes, and the party starts back up. The ghosts cheer. Gumball says he can fly and he's invisible and he feels awesome. Darwin asks if Gumball wants to go dancing. Gumball says dancing, they're ghosts and can do whatever they like. Darwin suggests they get out of here and go nuts. Gumball and Darwin fly out through the window and go to a gas station where Larry is asleep at the counter. They draw on his face until the sheriff comes in. The donut sheriff greets Larry. Larry wakes up and asks what he can do for the officer. He turns to the sheriff with his face now matching the mugshot on a wanted poster behind him. The sheriff holds up a taser and tells Larry to put his hands in the air. Gumball and Darwin go to the Robinsons' house and possess a moose head mounted to the wall. The stuffed moose head greets Margaret and puckers its lips. Mrs. Robinson drops the tray she was carrying, breaking the teacups. Mr. Robinson appears and asks what is going on. The stuffed moose head says nothing. Mr. Robinson faints, and Gumball and Darwin leave. Tina is telling Idaho and Banana Joe that trick or treat means give her their candy. Gumball gasps and says being a T-Rex would be fun. Darwin says Gumball should take left and he'll take right. They possess Tina but have difficulty moving. Gumball says it's way more complicated than it looks. Darwin tells him to move the calves. Gumball says to bend the knees. Darwin says he is bending them. Tina begins to fall over. Gumball yells to put the hands out. Tina falls face first into the sidewalk. Darwin says to bail. Gumball says to wait because he has to do a roar before they go. Tina roars and then Gumball and Darwin leave. Banana Joe asks if they should call a doctor, a vet, or a paleontologist. Back at the cemetery, Aeneas manages to climb out of the well. At the party, a ghost with a basketball for a head is holding Gumball's body and announces he found himself a couple of meat bags. Another ghost carrying Darwin's body asks if the basketball ghost wants to dance. Anais approaches a boarded-up window saying, guys, she's here, and asking them to let her in. Aeneas sees Gumball and Darwin's bodies dancing and slapping each other. She says, okay, in confusion. Aeneas goes into the house and sees the discarded vial on the ground. She asks what they have been drinking. She has a taste of the potion, allowing her to see the party. Meanwhile, Gumball and Darwin are standing on a rooftop under a full moon. Gumball asks if Darwin is sure about something because he does not think it's a good idea. Darwin tells him to come at him and give him his best shot because he's an immortal ghost and will not feel anything. Gumball says All right, Darwin asked for it. Gumball punches him, and Darwin spins around before falling down. Darwin says face down on the shingles with muffled speech that he forgot Gumball was a ghost too. Carrie appears. Gumball says, no, they're over here. Carrie sighs and teleports to them. She asks what they're thinking because it's nearly midnight. Darwin asks, so what? Carrie says, so if, they do not get back to their bodies by the stroke of midnight, they will remain ghosts forever. Gumball screams and then a tolling bell is heard. Gumball says, let him rephrase that, and screams louder. A ghost voice announces all ghosts must return to the graves at midnight. The ghosts from the party are returning to the cemetery. Darwin says they need to find their bodies. Gumball adds, and Anais. Carrie says, wait, that was the 12th stroke. They look around and a hand comes out of the ground, grabbing Gumball's leg and making him scream. Darwin asks if it hurts. Gumball says no, but it's really cold and wet and its fingernails are dirty. Anais is heard screaming in the distance, asking for help. The haunted house begins to crumble with eerie light emanating from the cracks. Gumball shouts not to worry because he's coming and struggles for freedom. He tells Carrie to cover her eyes. Carrie reminds him she can see through her hands. Gumball says, oh, whatever, and takes off his pants. The three of them run for the house. Gumball says he'll get Anais, and Darwin should find their bodies. More ghost hands rise from the ground and they dodge them, but Darwin trips over a grave marker. Darwin calls for help. Carrie says she'll handle this and helps Darwin up. Darwin thanks her. More ghost hands rise from the ground. Darwin screams. Carrie says it's a little too early to thank her and tells him to get ready to run. Darwin asks what she's doing. Carrie allows some ghost hands to pull her down. Darwin yells her name. Carrie says not to worry because she belongs to this world and they cannot take her. A ghost hand tugs her fringe and she screams about not the hair. She tells Darwin to just go. Darwin runs off, but a ghost hand stops him. The ghost says all ghosts must return to their graves. Darwin blows a raspberry into the hand and gets away while it wipes off the spit. Gumball throws open the doors to the house. Anais tells him she's over here. Gumball calls her name. Gumball rushes to Anais, who is now a ghost and being pulled down into a hole in the floor. Gumball says he's so sorry and this is all his fault. He's her big brother and should have looked after her and loves her so much. Anais says that's really touching, but she's kind of being dragged underground by a creepy ghost hand right now. Darwin points out their bodies are getting pulled into the hole. Gumball says they have no choice and they're going to have to jump and get them back. Darwin says, okay, they dive into the swirling green portal. Outside, Carrie is yelling into the hole as it collapses in on itself. She tells them, distressed to come on and they can do it. The hole gets smaller and closes up entirely. Carrie says no repeatedly and covers her eyes in grief. Carrie is left alone until the ground starts trembling. Gumball, Darwin, and Anais are ejected from the hole that opens. A ghost voice says no mortals allowed in the underworld. The hole closes, then reopens for a split second, spitting Gumball's pants back out. Everyone says, phew, in relief. Squealing tires are heard, and Nicole appears in Cartax. It crashes into a tombstone before stopping. Nicole gets out of the car, slamming the door hard enough to shatter its window. She says words cannot describe how furious she is because it's gone midnight. She asks what they have to say for themselves. Darwin, speaking in Anais' body, says they went trick or treating and took a shortcut. Gumball, speaking in Darwin's body, says they went to a ghost party and it was supposed to be fun. Anais, speaking in Gumball's body, says she did not know what the potion was going to do when she drank it. Gumball, Darwin, Anais, and Carrie suddenly realize something is wrong. Gumball in Darwin's body asks what's going on. Darwin in Anais' body continues the question. Anais in Gumball's body says here. Nicole asks what happened to them. Gumball in Darwin's body tells his mom not to freak out because Carrie can put them all back in. Their correct bodies. He asks Carrie if that's right. Carrie says, and grins nervously before teleporting away, leaving all three children trapped in the wrong bodies as the episode ends. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on, we have The Safety from Season 3, Episode 32. The Safety episode from The Amazing World of Gumball transforms a well-meaning safety lesson into a fascist dystopia where Darwin establishes a totalitarian surveillance state that strips away every freedom from Elmore's citizens, including control over their own bodies. The episode begins with a video titled, "Watch Out, Little Teddy Playing in Miss Simeon's Classroom." Cheery music accompanies the footage as a narrator introduces Little Teddy, who is very excited because it's cookie time. Little Teddy burns his hands while attempting to bring cookies out from an oven, screaming "ow" repeatedly. The narrator warns to be careful around ovens. The video switches to Little Teddy looking out from a window at a tree with a bird. The narrator says Little Teddy has seen a bird, and Little Teddy waves, saying hello. The bird greets him back. The narrator warns to watch out, and Little Teddy falls out of the window and hits the ground. The bird perches on Little Teddy's head and pecks his nose. The narrator warns to be careful around windows. Little Teddy is shown chasing a butterfly in a field. The narrator explains Little Teddy is having fun in the backyard with a butterfly, and that butterflies are pretty. After running a long distance, Little Teddy knocks himself over with a rake. The narrator warns to be careful around garden tools. The video transitions to Little Teddy walking to an old woman, like about to cross a road. The narrator says Little Teddy is helping a senior citizen and that it's kind of him because it's nice to be nice. Little Teddy and the old woman start crossing the road. The narrator warns to watch out. Little Teddy puts his arm around the old woman's shoulder, which angers her. The old woman screams and beats his head in with a crowbar until a bump rises from his head. The narrator warns to be careful around strangers. As the old woman leaves, Little Teddy is hit by a speeding car. The narrator adds, "and cars." The scene transitions to Little Teddy dancing inside a circle of singing children. The children sing that if you're going on adventures or having lots of fun, remember to be frightened, because being safe is number one. Little Teddy waves and says to remember that danger is lurking, but the video becomes eerily distorted and slowed as he says everywhere. The camera zooms out from the TV in Miss Simeon's classroom. Beside it, Mr. Small is screaming, frightened by the video. Gumball, Darwin, Sarah, Leslie, Masami, Molly, and Tobias, who were watching the video, are frozen with horrified expressions on their faces. Mr. Small tells everyone to take the rest of the day off. The haunted Mr. Small grabs a trash bin, uses it to cover his head, and rocks gently in a corner. The other students except Darwin walk away, all of them still having the same facial expressions. Darwin remains seated and the camera zooms into his face. By the pavement, Betty prepares to cross a road. Darwin screams and throws a trash bin at Betty and pulls Gumball with him. Gumball asks if Darwin has lost his mind and what that was all about. Darwin says careful. Darwin tackles Gumball before he steps into a puddle. Gumball asks what Darwin is doing. Darwin says he's keeping Gumball safe because he almost stepped in a puddle and could have slipped or worse, drowned. Gumball says Darwin might be overreacting just a teeny tiny bit. Darwin says he loves Gumball too much to let him get hurt, and he'll keep everyone safe. Betty places a hand on Darwin and asks if the kids are all right. Darwin flips her over and sends her flying into a nearby window. He screams after doing this. Darwin drags Gumball away. Gumball apologizes to Betty. Betty says off-screen that it's quite all right. The next morning, Gumball wakes up and tosses the alarm clock in Darwin's fishbowl to stop the alarm. He goes to the bathroom and unzips his shorts. The outside of the Watterson house is shown. Gumball screams off-screen. The scene cuts back to the living room as Gumball frantically runs downstairs. Gumball talks in panicky gibberish, points to his groin, and cries. Darwin asks what's wrong. Gumball pulls down his shorts and reveals his censored part. Darwin says, "It always looks like that." Gumball removes the censor and reveals that his entire crotch is missing. Darwin says, "Oh, that's because he put the child filter on the house." Gumball pulls up his shorts and tries to curse, but his words are blanked out. He asks what's happening because it's like there's some kind of device censoring every word he says. Darwin says cursing is unsafe because words can hurt. Gumball says he does not even know any real curse words, only the mom-sanctioned versions. Darwin says those words hint at the bad ones, so they need to be censored as well. Gumball asks, what they're supposed to say when they need to vent. Darwin asks, like, when. Gumball says, like, now, and stomps on Darwin's foot. Darwin tries to curse, but the scene cuts to a slideshow featuring a photo of a woman hugging a baby, a photo of a man raking in a field, a photo of a donkey, and a photo of a clown at a party. Peaceful music plays in the slideshow. The scene shows the Wattersons eating literal molecules. Gumball scoops a handful and gingerly munches on them while Darwin contentedly watches. Then Gumball spits some out in disgust. Gumball complains that Darwin is being a complete mom, saying no offense to Nicole, but offense to Darwin. Nicole says sorry, but Darwin is right. She explains, vegetables are full of pesticides, meat is full of hormones, fish is full of mercury, milk is not meant to be digested, and sugar makes you fat. Darwin adds that bread is full of gluten. The only solution is to eat pure proteins, carbohydrates, fat, minerals, and vitamins. He says it is for their own good. Nicole, Richard, and Anais repeat in a dazed voice that it is for their own good. Richard asks someone to pass the iron. Richard is given a block of iron, which he shreds and chews. Gumball asks if he's the only one who thinks this is completely crazy. Darwin asks if it's crazy to keep your loved ones safe. Richard says he does not mind as long as he's full. Richard walks to the fridge, making clanking sounds, and opens it. Darwin warns Mr. Dad to be careful because it's dangerous to take too many vitamins. Richard sadly closes the fridge, and as he groans, magnets stick to his stomach, spelling all. Richard says, all. In the living room, Gumball turns on the TV and watches cartoons. An ostrich runs through a desert while a wolf prepares to catch the ostrich with dynamite and explosives. Gumball laughs. Unaware of Darwin dialing a number beside him, the wolf picks up his phone and says hello. Darwin says he would like to complain about the cartoon because he disapproves of the use of dynamite, calling it imitable and saying it could endanger the life of a child. The wolf asks where a child would be able to buy dynamite. Darwin asks if the wolf is saying his channel and sponsors do not care about the nation's children. The wolf blinks and says, okay, no dynamite. The wolf brings out an anvil. Darwin says, sorry, but they cannot allow that either. The wolf says, a child cannot lift an anvil. Darwin says off screen that the child might hurt himself trying. The wolf dejectedly throws the anvil away. The ostrich runs by but is stopped by Darwin, who tells him no running in the road. The wolf prepares to bite the ostrich. Frozen midair, Darwin says, and of course, no violence. The wolf says he was not really going to bite the ostrich's tail because the joke is that the ostrich will give him his own tail. Darwin says, no jokes, please, because a child might laugh and choke. The wolf asks if they can keep the music. Darwin says, no, thank you, because it's the gateway to rock and roll, which is the root of all evil. Gumball reacts shocked. Darwin tells him to repeat after him that it's for their own good. The wolf and ostrich say in a dazed voice that it's for their own good and slowly walk off screen. Gumball protests that he would never imitate what he sees on TV and begs them to come back. The ostrich and wolf leave and Gumball cries. Then he gets angry, bites his own tail, hops up, hits the ceiling, and falls down with birds flying around his head. Darwin says Gumball cannot talk to characters inside a TV and shoos away the birds, adding that birds can carry diseases. Gumball collapses and blacks out just as his show ends. Gumball wakes up groaning and is shocked to find himself chained to a chair at the table. After barely struggling, he sees Richard, Anais, and Nicole seemingly dazed and creepily happy. Gumball asks what's going on. Nicole says Darwin tied them up while he went to make sure the rest of Elmore is safe. Nicole, Richard, and Anais say in a dazed voice that it is for their own good. Gumball asks how this can be for their own good and says they should realize something, but he gets shocked by a machine attached to his butt. Gumball asks what that is. Anais says that's the best way for him to exercise safely. A sprinkler on the table shoots out a pink substance into each family member's mouth. Gumball does not open his mouth and gets splattered with the substance. Richard says, and that was his idea. Gumball shakes off the substance and finds a bucket under his chair. Nicole, Richard, and Anais repeat in a dazed voice that it is for his own good. Gumball asks if they have lost their minds and how they could give up their freedom. Nicole drops her pretense and everyone else follows suit. Nicole says okay, and they do not have much time, telling Gumball to just do as she says. Gumball refuses, saying he loves his mother, but he stands for freedom. Anais says Gumball does not get it. Gumball says sorry, but he cannot hear them over his freedom. Nicole quietly says they're talking about but a surveillance camera swivels to their direction, and all of them except Gumball put on their guises again. Gumball says that's right, and they should laugh it off about giving away their freedom. He notices the camera behind him and speaks quietly, telling everybody to be careful because they're being watched. Richard, Nicole, and Anais sigh. Gumball asks if that's what they wanted to say. Nicole, Anais, and Richard, still retaining their guises, gesture towards the kitchen counter with their eyes and heads. Gumball notices the key to their locks. Gumball pulls an evil face and says, "Of course." Gumball hops with his chair to the counter. He glances at his family and they nod. Then he springs and instead takes the nearby potted cactus with his mouth, saying he got it. Richard, Nicole, and Anais shake their heads. Gumball painstakingly chews up the cactus while his family watches in puzzlement, although still pretending to be happy. After a while, Gumball forms a replica of the key out of the cactus he chewed up with his mouth. He spits it towards one of his paws and unlocks himself as the camera swivels away. Anais, Richard, and Nicole have now dropped their guises, and their puzzlement is plainly shown. Gumball asks, "What?" Nicole says, "Oh, nothing," and they should get out of here and stop his brother. Richard, Nicole, Gumball, and Anais barge through the door of their house and run to confront Darwin. Nicole says he's at the town hall and they have to get there and stop him. Gumball asks, "Before what?" Anais says Darwin plans to invade the rest of the world to make it safe. They screech to a halt. Gumball asks how they know about all this. Nicole says Darwin told them. Gumball asks why they did not stop him. Richard says because it's Darwin and he's really cute. Nicole imitates Darwin saying all resistance is futile. Anais imitates Darwin saying, those who stray from the path will be corrected. Richard imitates Darwin saying today, a safer Elmore, tomorrow a safer world. Gumball asks how they could not see he was dangerous, but admits that now that he thinks of it, it must have been adorable. Everyone says, ow. Gumball says, all right, they should take this cutie patootie down. Before Gumball can punch a fist into his paw, the sound of rubber is heard. Gumball, Anais, Nicole, and Richard are shown surrounded by citizens in protective gear, armed with batons. They raise their batons but are interrupted by Principal Brown. Principal Brown quietly says he does not mean to alarm them or damage their eardrums by shouting, but under the new regime they are under arrest for treason. He asks them not to force the citizens to use their balloon batons. Gumball asks to wait and pokes a baton, asking if it's real. Principal Brown says no because that would be unsafe. Gumball asks what's to stop them from running away. Principal Brown says running is now an unsafe act. Gumball says, oh good, the Wattersons run away. Principal Brown gently says, stop. The citizens sidle after the Wattersons, taking extreme caution in moving. Principal Brown says into a radio that they have no other choice but to engage in a vehicle chase. They inch to a parked vehicle and begin to push it. Principal Brown groans and says he wishes they were still allowed to drive. Harold says, sorry, sir, but under the new regime, complaining about the regime is a punishable offense. Harold and Jeff repeatedly hit Principal Brown's head with their batons. The Wattersons arrive at the town hall. Gumball says okay and explains how they will get in. Gumball traces an invisible diagram in the air, explaining his plan as he speaks. He says they come in from there, go around there, and meet there. He asks if that's clear and says they should go. Richard imitates Gumball, drawing the diagram and says it's not working. Gumball says that was just a diagram. Aeneas says they could not see it. Gumball says fair point. The plan is for Dad to create a diversion at the entrance, allowing them to zip line inside. Mom neutralizes the first 3 guards. Aeneas hacks into the alarm system and opens the door so Gumball can get to Darwin and destroy him. He pulls an evil face. Aeneas, Nicole, and Richard look at him with shocked expressions. Gumball returns to normal and adds verbally, "The plan begins." From the top of a building, Nicole, Gumball, and Aeneas watch a wary Tony at the entrance. He suddenly sees Richard dressed like a woman. As Tony confusedly expresses himself quietly, Richard knocks him out with a fire hydrant. Richard gives 2 thumbs up. Gumball asks why Richard needed to wear a dress to do that. Richard says so he can repeatedly spin around playfully. Nicole grabs a bar from an antenna and tells them to hold on to her. They crash into a warning scene and slide down. A TV narrator warns that these stunts are performed by cartoon characters and to not under any circumstances attempt to imitate or recreate the majority of things that happen in cartoons. Nicole, Gumball, and Anais enter the town hall. A red guard notices them. Nicole says to leave this to her. Nicole cracks her paws, her neck, her head, and her ears. Then she charges at the guard. But before she can land a punch on him, a title card with BIFF blocks the action. Nicole asks if anyone saw what happened because she's pretty sure she did not hit this guy. A purple guard charges. Before Nicole can kick him, another title card with Kapow replaces the action. Nicole asks what's going on because she did not even touch him. Gumball thinks Darwin still has the child lock on. An orange guard charges and Twiddle appears before he gets knocked out. Nicole asks about Twiddle and if Darwin is censoring the sound effects as well. More guards appear. Nicole tells Gumball and Aeneas to go on ahead because this is going to be pretty boring to watch. After they run off, Nicole and the guards clash, but their fight is censored by another card with edited. Aeneas and Gumball enter a corridor lined with surveillance monitors on each side. Gumball asks what all this is. Aeneas says it must be where Darwin monitors the whole town. Gumball steps on something that turns out to be bubble wrap. Aeneas says they're getting close. Gumball tells her to wait and pops all of the bubbles on the sheet of bubble wrap before saying, "Okay." Gumball and Aeneas walk towards the entrance to Darwin's lair. Gumball says they need a code and asks how they're going to get in. Aeneas says not to worry because she has her ways. She types HACK to spell hack, then presses enter. The door opens. Gumball asks, "Really? Just hack?" Aeneas says just kidding. And actually, she bypassed the storage controller, tapped directly into the VNX array head, decrypted the nearline SAS disks. Gumball nods, saying, repeatedly. Aeneas continues that she injected the flash drivers into the network's fiber pack before disabling the IDS, routed incoming traffic through offshore proxies. Gumball steps back and continues nodding. Aeneas says she accessed the ESXi server cluster in the primary data center and disabled the inter-VSAN routing in the layer 3. Gumball leaves Aeneas. Gumball sees Darwin in his lair, smiling almost innocently. He grabs a drape and says, "Revolution." Darwin says no and tells him to use the stairs because it's safer. Gumball sighs, jumps off a ledge, swings multiple times trying to reach for Darwin, but fails. The drape stops swinging. Gumball says, "Oh, whatever." Gumball drops to the floor and limps threateningly towards Darwin after dusting himself. Darwin says, "That was not very safe," and asks if Gumball hurt himself. Gumball says yes, but that does not mean Darwin is right. Darwin says he's doing this for Gumball's own good, and he's the hero here. Gumball asks Darwin one question about whether a hero would sit on a throne, carry a riding crop, or hang out in a lair surrounded with plans to take over the world. Darwin says that's 3 questions. Gumball says that's not the point and tells Darwin to look at himself. Gumball grabs a camera and points it to Darwin. Darwin sees himself and asks if he's the villain. Gumball nods yes. Darwin asks if he went too far. Gumball gestures to Darwin's security monitors, his rule book, a map of some of the world's continents, his hat and cape, Gumball says yes repeatedly, then says no because the cape is awesome. Darwin asks what he's going to do. Gumball says to just accept that sometimes life is not safe. Darwin says Gumball is right and he's going to get rid of all these rules. Gumball asks if before Darwin does that, can he add one? The scene skips to Elmore Junior High just as the bell rings. Gumball and Darwin, dressed with capes, pass by a school corridor. Leslie, Banana Joe, Tobias, Carmen, and Sarah suddenly line up. Tobias says, "All hail the mighty Gumball and Darwin, lords of Elmore." After they salute, they slap themselves and Gumball laughs as the episode ends. Before we move on, make sure to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Moving on to The Disaster Season 4, Episode 40, The Disaster. The disaster episode from The Amazing World of Gumball transforms a simple shopping trip into a nightmare where reality itself becomes a weapon, as Rob systematically destroys every relationship Gumball has by manipulating the fabric of existence with a universal remote that controls time, space, and perception. The episode begins with the Wattersons driving to the Elmore Mall. Gumball stares out the window and yawns. Nicole encourages everyone to stop yawning, saying it's a lovely morning. The family begins singing together. Nicole sings, "They're off to buy some stuff at the Elmore Mall." Anais sings that Saturdays are cool. Darwin sings because they don't go to school. Anais and Darwin point their fingers at Gumball, who is still staring outside the window. Anais pokes Gumball in response. Gumball sings nervously that he is going to buy some donkey drool, then apologizes, saying that's all he had. Nicole continues singing that nothing can go wrong. Richard, Darwin, and Anais join in singing "They'll Be Happy All Day Long," and that's the reason why they sing this song. The camera cuts to the Elmore Mall parking lot where a red van is parked. A shady man warns someone to be careful with this universal remote because it has a power only a fool would not fear. He asks what they will use it for. Rob steps out of the van and says for TVs, DVD players, and vengeance. The shady man says no, it cannot be used for evil, and demands Rob give it back. A black cloudy hand reaches out from the van and tries to grab the remote away. Rob tells the old man to back off and presses the power button on the remote. The van starts driving forward. Rob presses the arrows on the remote to try to stop the van. Eventually the van lands on its side. Rob presses the stop button to stop the van and says, "Amazing." Rob points the remote at an ATM and presses eject. The ATM starts spilling money. Rob then points the remote at a fire sprinkler, turning it on. Next, he runs to the right side of the parking lot and turns the day into night, then runs to the left side and turns it back into day. Finally, he rewinds back in time to a scene from the Void episode. He stands behind Gumball, Darwin, and Mr. Small in the Void. Mr. Small tells the children to look at all the mistakes the world has ever made. Rob watches his past self trying to get Gumball and Darwin's attention. His past self yells for them and says, "Over here." Rob watches his past self cling to the van as they leave, and as Janice drives off, Rob watches his past self getting ejected from the void, leaving him with the disfigured look he now has. He then watches a scene from the Nobody episode where his past self sits on a bench and Gumball and Darwin talk to him. Gumball says there's no bad guy here and Rob could be their mortal enemy. Rob says Gumball turned him into the villain and left him with this broken body and gave him this ridiculous voice. He points the remote at himself and resets his voice, saying, well, now he's in control. He fast forwards back to the van and says the time has come for Gumball to pay. The shady man reaches out saying same for Rob because that remote was $12.99. Rob presses a button on the remote, erasing the shopkeeper from existence as he cries out in pain. The Wattersons continue singing about there being no space to park, but they're having such a lark that they don't like having to wait until it's dark. Gumball says to break it down and make scratching sounds using the window. Nicole stops the car and asks Gumball Honey if he could stop that. Gumball asks what and says it's not hurting anyone. He continues making the scratching sound. Nicole says it's grating and she's driving, then starts the car and tells Gumball she said stop. The car ascends a level in the parking lot. Rob sees the car and smiles. Rob hides behind a parked car and says, prepare to suffer. Nicole says she won't ask Gumball again. Gumball says he's just playing with the window. Rob pauses the car. Rob walks up to the car and says he will destroy Gumball and everyone he loves. He starts the engines of all the cars around the Wattersons, walks away, and hits play. Gumball completes his sentence, asking what's the worst that can happen. All of the cars drive towards the Wattersons and crash at the same time. The camera zooms out to reveal their car was destroyed on top of the pileup. The Wattersons leave the destroyed car and walk towards the exit. Gumball sings nervously that everyone is happy because they realize it was not his fault, and even if it was, he would not have done it on purpose, and therefore they forgive him. Nicole says she told him to stop playing with that window, but he never listens. Talking to him can be like trying to comb the skin of a kiwi fruit. Gumball asks what? Nicole says this is going to cost a fortune and asks if he thinks money grows on trees, then admits it does because it's made of paper, but that's not the point. She's cutting off his allowance because they're broke enough as it is. She's so angry she cannot think of words, so she's just going to make sounds. She growls and snarls angrily, then storms into the mall. The others sigh angrily at Gumball and start walking in as well. Gumball sighs sadly. The scene cuts to a laser video store. Gumball and Darwin are inside standing next to a bargain bin. Gumball tells Darwin to cheer up because they still have $2 and can buy a game from there. Darwin says everyone knows the bargain bin is a grandma Christmas trap. He sighs and takes a game called Extreme Tractor Racing. The review says, here's a cheat code. Go left, forward, right, forward, back to the store where you bought it and ask for a refund. Gumball takes a different game called Daisy the Donkey, the video game. He reads the review saying, if boredom did not put you into a coma during the show, then this game will finish the job. Darwin takes another game and says they have a new Legend of Zelmore. He looks at the disc more closely and asks what, noting it's the Tale of Zolmore for Polystation. He opens the case and sees there's not even a disc inside because it's painted on the box. It's a knockoff. Rob appears outside and says menacingly to prepare to lose your brother. He points the remote at Gumball and turns the subtitles on. Darwin says now they have nothing to play for the whole summer. Gumball sighs and subtitles appear in front of him. Darwin reads the subtitles saying if they had not adopted him, they would have enough money. He asks if Gumball is serious. Gumball notices the subtitles and shrugs. The subtitles change to read that it's obvious. Darwin asks what Gumball means by that. The subtitles change again to ask if Darwin is stupid. Darwin reads the subtitles while crying and asks if he's stupid. He runs away, crying. Gumball asks what's wrong with Darwin. The subtitles change again. Gumball reads them saying, apart from the fact Darwin is a glorified pet that looks like a tiny orange sausage. Darwin throws a video game at Gumball. Gumball says ow and yells for Darwin. Gumball starts running and the subtitles move with him. Gumball tries to say, hey, wait, but the edges of the subtitles hit the doorway and they fall apart, the letters spilling all over the floor. Gumball is knocked backwards. Gumball gets up and asks what's going on, then yells for Darwin. He starts running after Darwin while starting to cry, saying, buddy, please, and he did not mean to upset him. Gumball runs towards an escalator calling for Darwin. He sees someone and says, Darwin, asking what? The camera reveals a person with a large hot dog-shaped head with Darwin-shaped hair. The hot dog guy look-alike says, Gumball thought he was the hot dog guy, right? Gumball says no, he thought he was his brother, Darwin. The look-alike says, oh, that's a nice change. Gumball runs down the escalator where he finds Richard, Nicole, and Aeneas. Gumball calls for his mom and dad while crying. Nicole hugs Gumball and says not to worry, sweetie, because they'll find him. Gumball continues to cry. Richard says, of course, they understand Gumball when he's making no sense because they're his family. Aeneas says she thinks she mistranslated a word and asks if when Gumball cried, did he really mean evil magic subtitles? Rob hides behind a column aiming the remote at Gumball's parents. Rob says menacingly that now it's time for Gumball to lose his parents. He says parental filter off and turns off the parental filter. Richard says, okay, Nicole, here's the plan. She sorts out this mess and he'll get a box of donuts and eat away the stress this family keeps dumping on him. Nicole says, "Honey," she knows it's difficult because it's so prominent, but could Richard please forget his stomach for a minute? Richard says it's Nicole's nagging voice he wishes he could forget. Nicole says she wishes she could forget Richard forgetting their anniversary. Richard asks the kids if they could just cover their ears for a second. Gumball and Anais cover their ears. Richard and Nicole then have a muffled argument. Richard says he and Nicole have come to an agreement. He's getting a donut and she's getting a better husband. Gumball and Anais ask what? Nicole storms off angrily. Richard starts to panic and tells Gumball to please look after his sister because he's going to go and de-ruin their lives. He runs after Nicole. Anais tells Dad to wait and runs after Richard. Gumball asks where they're going. Rob is still hiding behind the column. Anais stops running and says Richard managed to win Mom over once. Doing it again would be like nailing a backflip in high heels on a tightrope. She starts running again. Gumball says he's supposed to be looking after her and runs after Anais. Rob says menacingly that Gumball will lose them all. Rob turns down the brightness until the screen goes completely black. Gumball is still running and yells for Anais to wait. Rob turns the brightness back up, revealing Gumball lost in a crowd. Gumball spots Anais and chases her, but Rob turns down the brightness again just as he catches up to his sister. Gumball jumps up saying, "Gotcha." The screen becomes pitch black, and a splat and a scream can be heard. Rob turns the brightness all the way back up, revealing Sarah lying on the ground with Gumball's face on hers. He gets up with ice cream around his mouth and sees Penny. He shakes off the ice cream. Gumball tells Penny he knows there's no way to make this look okay, but he's going to try anyway. Rob peeks from behind a vending machine and changes the language spoken from English to Cantonese. Gumball and Penny have a conversation in Cantonese with, subtitles. Gumball says someone has been messing with him all day and now it looks like he's cheating on Penny. Penny says she knows Gumball would not betray her like this, but this language sounds like they're arguing, so now she's upset. She starts crying and runs away. Gumball says, "No, Penny, please wait," and starts running after her. Rob smiles and presses fast forward on the remote, speeding the chase up. Penny runs up the escalator and Gumball accidentally pushes her through the glass railing. She screams, and as her drink hits the floor, Rob pauses the scene. Gumball asks what's happening. He runs down the escalator and sees Nicole hugging Hank's arm. Gumball asks what this is. He encounters Anais crying in a crowd. Gumball asks what's going on. He walks by Penny falling in midair. Rob says off-screen he did warn Gumball. Rob walks towards Richard, who is crying and eating donuts. Rob says he said he would destroy Gumball and everyone he loves. He takes Richard's wallet and pulls out a family photo, then tears the photo in half. Gumball says it was him who did all this. He falls to his knees and says his arch nemesis, Roy. Rob says no, his name is Rob. He stomps his foot. Gumball says, okay, he's sorry, but how has Rob done this? Rob shows Gumball the remote. Gumball asks why. Rob says to wait up because this requires the right mood. Rob changes the format to a widescreen format and turns down the contrast. Sad music starts to play. Rob says Gumball has only himself to blame because Gumball being the hero of all this means Rob has to be the villain, but Rob never wanted to be the villain. He wanted to be the cute sidekick who gets his own plush toy and a spin-off show. Gumball asks what Rob is talking about. Rob asks if Gumball really does not get it and says Gumball is so happy to star in his amazing world. He asks if Gumball cannot see that none of this is real. The camera zooms back to reveal more of the mall. Gumball looks around and says he does not understand. Rob sighs and says, it does not matter. Once Gumball is out of the picture, Rob can be whoever he wants. Rob presses the AV button and an entrance to the void appears behind Gumball. Rob says he's sorry Gumball Watterson, but there's no other way. He prepares to kick Gumball into the void. Gumball says no and tackles Rob. The remote slips away from their grasp. Rob and Gumball roll over as they fight each other. The two roll over the remote, causing smooth jazz music to play. Gumball asks if it's him or does this music have a whole different vibe to this situation. Rob says, yeah, hold on. The two roll back over the remote, turning off the music. They continue fighting. Rob kicks Gumball dangerously close to the void. He goes to grab the remote, then looks as Gumball runs towards him. Gumball knocks the remote away, causing it to hit a wall and flip over, turning on slow motion. Rob tries to punch Gumball, but his slow punch does nothing. Gumball attempts the same, but his punch is too slow. Rob tries again to no avail. They both shrug and look at the remote. Gumball grabs it while Rob tries to hold him back. Rob says in slow motion to give him that remote. Gumball presses the power off button at Rob, making him suddenly drop. The speed returns to normal. Gumball says, "Ha, in your face." He pauses and says, "Dude." Gumball runs to Rob and asks if he's okay, calling him various wrong names while crying. He sets the remote down on Rob. It slides off, turning the power back on. Rob wakes up and yells that Rose is not even a man's name. Gumball screams and falls backwards. Rob grabs the remote, corners Gumball, and changes the format to repeatedly hit his head. Gumball leaps at Rob but fails to grab the remote and is ejected towards the void. Rob walks up to him and says, "Time to eject him once and for all." He raises the remote at Gumball and presses eject, but nothing happens. Rob angrily mashes the button while Gumball gets up. Gumball says the batteries are dead and asks, "What now?" Rob says Gumball is going to do what any hero would do to save the ones he loves. He's going to follow the remote. Rob throws the remote into the void. Gumball walks forward as if to strangle Rob, pauses, faces towards the void, and prepares to jump. He runs but stops quickly after noticing the height. Gumball says that's pretty high and maybe just, then crouches down and starts climbing down the entrance as Rob watches nonchalantly. Eventually, Gumball is barely hanging on by his fingers. Gumball says darn it, and his fingers slip. He screams as he falls. As Gumball falls, Rob walks up and grabs the sides of the entrance. Rob says goodbye and closes the entrance. The credits start to roll on the other side with the music warped. The music fades away as the remote falls. Gumball grabs it and mashes the buttons repeatedly to make it work. Then he flips the remote to reveal that the batteries were out of place. Gumball asks what, then says yes and pushes the batteries back in place. Gumball hits a rock, knocking the remote to the side. He tries to reach it and eventually ends up pressing the rewind button, which sends him back through the episode when he fought with Rob, then lost Penny and his family, and finally to the beginning. The episode ends with a "To Be Continued" title card, leaving Gumball trapped in a time loop where he must relive the worst day of his life and somehow find a way to prevent Rob from destroying everything he loves. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.